Good morning to you all. Today may I request Dr. B. Menaka Madam deliver a welcome address. Please, Madam.
Thank you, sir. Respected resource person, most respected professor and head, member syndicate, VC officiating committee, Professor T.R. Gurumurthy sir, faculty members from Department of Commerce, dear participants, good morning everybody. On behalf of the Department of Commerce and my own behalf, I welcome all to the 2 weeks capacity building program. At this juncture, I would like to introduce our resource person, Dr. P. Saravanan, is currently professor in the area of finance and accounting, IIM Trichirappalli. Earlier, he was a professor in IIM Shillong. His area of interest are corporate finance, security analysis and portfolio management, corporate governance, and project finance. Sir has published 36 articles in various journals, including A category journals. Sir has written 3 books in the area of accounting and financial management, published by McGraw-Hill, Oxford and Pearson Education Publishers. He has evaluated and adjudicated 87 PhD theses in the field of management, humanities and social science and commerce. As the chairman of the panel of examiners in several institutions, Sir has conducted around 100 corporate trainings program on several topics across the country. His consulting client list include Ministry of Commerce, Ministry of Corporate Affairs, Department of Public Sector Enterprise, Government of India, etc. He is an independent director in the board of directors of Tamil Nadu Small Industries Development Corporation Limited. He is a member of the American Finance Association, Financial Management Association, International and American Accounting Association. He is also a visiting professor to IIM Indore, IIM Ranchi, IIM Rohtak, XLRI, Jamshedpur, etc. His teaching feedback ranges from 3.8 to 4.93 out of 5 across all the programs. With this brief introduction, I welcome Professor P. Saravanan sir to deliver his lecture on statistical tools in research. Sir, please.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for the nice introduction. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Just I will share the screen. Okay, are you able to see the slide?
Visible, sir? Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. Okay, right. So, good morning to everyone. I think you're having a nice time and you're having various topics related to your research methods and including statistical tools and other aspects. So, what we'll do is today we'll talk about 2 interesting tools which we invariably use if you are teaching finance. Definitely, you need to use these 2 tools in your research paper. Namely, one is correlation, another one is regression. So, before looking at these 2 interesting topics, let us look at what is basically data analysis and what exactly we are looking into that as a broad domain. If I ask you what is data analysis, the answer for the question is very simple. It is nothing but the art of examining, summarizing, drawing and conclusion from data. So then some of you may be wondering, sir, what are you talking? Statistics is all about art? Because in statistics we invariably use a lot of formulae. We use different formulae for different methods. I hope yesterday you have had a discussion on factor analysis. So there you used a different formulae for calculating the factors, for grouping the factors. So we have various things. Right. Then how do you call this as an art of exam? Art you are calling this one. So I'm talking about not statistics per se. I'm talking about the data analysis per se. So data analysis as a domain, I call this as an art. How can it could be an art? Because the machine or the software, whatever we are using, I hope every one of you must be familiar by this time, different types of softwares like SPSS or Stata or like that we are using various variety of softwares we are using. So the softwares are machines. So whatever the data that we feed, only it take that input and generate some output. So we as a human being, we as a researcher, we as a professors, we need to make an interpretation on the output, whatever it is being generated by the softwares. So that is the context in which I'm saying that it is the art. So when I say that statistics is an art, often people get confused. How come statistics can be an art? Because it's all formulae. We have the systematic method of examining the relationship between the different numbers. How can it be art? When I say art, I mean to say that the software will do all the analysis for us, and we as a researcher need to examine, summarize, and draw some conclusion from the data. So that is the context in which I'm saying that this is the art, right? So how do you say art further? Because we need to use creativity. So the machine generates you a lot of output. You look at that and you try to connect between the two variables, right? So we call, that's why I say there is an amount of creativity involved. So good data analysis involves common sense, technical expertise, and curiosity. So this is the what you must be already learning, technical expertise. So technical expertise is basically for what kind of research problem, what kind of statistical tools to use, and for what kind of output we are getting, which output we should take and use it in our research paper. Often, when I was evaluating the PhD thesis, I find many students simply copy and paste the entire output generated by the R or generated by the any of the software. That is not required. The entire output is not required for the reader. You have to only provide the what is required for that context. That is what is required. That is what is required. So that is one part. Good data analysis involves common sense. The second part is what you must be learning called technical expertise. Then how about this first one, third one, sir? First one I said common sense. Common sense means because the number says we cannot go ahead with that. Because the number says there is a strong positive correlation. So therefore, I would like to say that, that is what is correct. I'm giving a very simple example. For example, let us suppose that say in Bangalore, in one particular part of the city, on every Saturday generally, I'm saying that on Saturday nights, the burglary levels are going up. The burglary level or house breaking, let's say that. House breaking means you just somebody close to her house and go out for some work, and when they come back and they found out their house is being broke open by some thieves. So the police department in that location, in that locality, they try to investigate on various parameters, and they observed that on Saturday the house burglary level and the sale of ice cream in that locality are very high. They find out a statistically very significant correlation. There's a perfect positive correlation between sale of ice cream and house burglary in that location. So being the police officer in charge of that locality, can we say that you should ban sale of ice cream because of the sale of ice cream only the house burglary is happening in that locality? So being a police officer, can we say that nobody should sell ice cream in that locality on Saturday? Can we say that? Yes, can we say that or not? Because our technical expertise says that there's a positive correlation between sale of ice cream and house burglary. So can we say that nobody in that locality should sell ice cream on Saturdays? Can we ban sale of ice cream? Yes, any response?
No, sir.
Yeah, big no. Definitely big no. Why? Because there is no connect. Because there is no connect between sale of ice cream and house burglary, right? Though statistically we got a perfect positive correlation. Statistically we got a perfect positive correlation, but there is no connect. That's where I said that you have to use common sense. We have to use common sense. This also I noticed many times. Many times people write report, people write papers without looking into the common sense. They say, sir, I got statistically significant outputs, sir. I got statistically significant relationships, sir. Okay, that is fine. But we need to use common sense, whether it is realistically fitting. So for instance, in this example, just now I told that there is a positive correlation between sale of ice cream and the house burglary. So there may be a positive correlation, but there is no connection because house burglary is happening because Saturday night I wanted to go for a movie. So I'm in a hurriedly, I'm not locking my room, locking my house properly. Okay, so the various reasons why house burglary is happening on Saturday, there is no connect between sale of ice cream and house burglary, right? So though you may be getting a statistically significant result, you got to use your common sense. Very, very important point. I saw that many people are not using that one. They simply say, my result says like this. Okay, fine, I agree with you. But will it hold true in the real life? Is it making any sense? Will it hold true? So that is what we need to look at that. That is why I use the word common sense. And the third point, we need to have a curiosity. So why such kind of relationship happens? So what probably might be the reason? So we need to infer the reason on our own, or we need to look at the literature, what other people are talking about that. So basically, any kind of statistical tools you can use, right? But what you need to know, you need to have technical expertise. There is no dispute about that. You need to know how to use the tool. You need to know how to use the software, how to provide the input, how to get the output, and how to interpret that. And when you interpret and record in your report, or when you interpret and record in your thesis or your report, you got to ensure that we use some bit of common sense. You cannot go simply because sir, this is what is my results are saying, sir. So I will write like that. Okay, you can write like that, but you have to make sure that it is holding true in a very common sense manner. Third one, you need to have curiosity. So why that kind of things are happening? What probably could be the reason? What are the plausible reasons? Right, which when you write, people should agree to those possible reasons. People should not, counter argue saying that what you are saying is not correct, right? So we need to have some bit of curiosity. And then in this session, let us talk about, how to choose the appropriate statistical test. I think already you must have learned. And then we can also talk about how to run the test with the help of the software, which you already know. I hope most of you are familiar with different software like Stata or R Studio or with SPSS, you must be seeing that. And most important is a third point, interpret the results in the output. Because what happened, as I said a few minutes ago, when you feed anything to the machine will generate you the output. The machine will generate you the output. It is up to us, researcher, to make a proper interpretation of the results. I mean, a very simple example. You all know that when you are administering a questionnaire, you administer a question, you are giving a code. For male, you give code number 1. For female, you give code number 2. You can give any number, just I'm saying for the sake of simplicity. For male, you are giving 1. For female, you are giving 2. With this input, what is the maximum statistical analysis you can do for this particular variable? You are asking in the questionnaire, what is your gender? You say male or female. You have only this point. So when you enter this point, what is the maximum analysis that you can do? Maximum analysis you can do that I fed all the questionnaire. I can count in my total survey how many of them are male, how many of them are female, how many of them male are in percentage, how many of the female are in percentage. That is the maximum analysis that you can do. I repeat, that is the maximum analysis that you can do, because that is a yes or no kind of type. Basically, you say, are you a male or female? Either the person could be a male or it could be a female, because we captured only those 2 points. With that, the maximum possible analysis that we can do is how many male I have, how many female I have in my entire survey. What is the percentage of the male and female proportion out of my total survey that I collected? You know what some people have done? Because you did a coding as 1 and 2, you give it to the software and ask the software to calculate mean, median, mode. What is this, sir? What is the merit of calculating mean, median, mode? When you ask the software will generate you. So the mean is 1.3, like that it will give. But will it make any sense? Will it make any sense for you? Because you coded male as 1 and female as 2. So the maximum possible statistical analysis that you can do is how many male I have, how many female I have. But if you ask the machine, it will calculate all kinds of statistical answers. You ask the machine to calculate mean, median, mode, whatever you want to calculate, it will calculate and give it to you. But will it make any sense? Will it make any sense? Yes? Anybody from audience? Will it make any sense?
No, sir. No, sir.
No. I saw a report wherein which they computed for gender. They computed they coded as 1 and 2, and they reported mean. So that won't make any sense. Why? Because now what we do, so why are we committing that mistake? That's what I wanted to come to the point. How come we commit the mistake? We enter all the data. In the questionnaire into the questionnaire data, we enter into the software, and we ask the software to do all kinds of analysis. In this process, we forget to note it out, right? So that's why I said that you need to be a little careful when you interpret the results, especially when you're looking at the output. Because then some of you may head out, sir, will the software won't tell you? Why the software should tell you? You ask the software to run mean, median for the variable that you coded 1 and 2. So that ran and give it to you. So that machine don't know what is 1 means, what is 2 means. So you ask the machine did it for you. Are you getting? Machine have no brain. Whatever you say, the machine will do for you, right? So therefore, interpreting the result is a most important point. And the third point is another interesting point. We should develop skills in writing about the meaning of the results. That's what I said. That many people simply copy the entire output and paste it in your report. Absolutely not required. I repeat, absolutely not required. There is no need to copy the entire output and paste it in your report. You can take only the table, or you can take only the values, whatever is relevant for in that context, you go to take that table only. Because when you run in any kind of a test in any software, they generate you more output. They provide you more output. So we don't want all the output. We wanted only the output which is what is required for our writing. So you need to develop that skill. You need to develop that skill in writing about the meaning of the results. And while writing about the meaning of the results, you should be very careful, because what happened, I observed many people simply wrote, this is what is our results. What I recommend or what I suggest, you need to go back to the literature and look at what others are saying. See, this is what is my research. This is what is my results are saying. What other people in the literature they are talking. Am I agreeing with some of them, or am I disagreeing with them, or am I giving a totally new dimension, or am I giving a totally new direction to the existing conversation? That's a very important point. So statistics is not only about running with the number and only coming with a significant result. You should also be able to communicate to the editor, or should also be able to communicate to the reader of your manuscript or of your report, to say that what is the new dimension that you are bringing, or are you in agreement with the existing people in the literature? Are you disagreeing with them? Or are you completely throwing a new dimension into the conversation? Already there is a conversation is happening on that particular topic for last 10 years. So are you adding any new dimension into that conversation? See, I hope most of you must have known by this time. See, writing a research paper or writing a PhD thesis or writing a report, whatever that thing you're doing, we are not the first people who are doing that work. Before us, there are already so many people who have done, and already there is a conversation going on. So when you wanted to part of the conversation, you should know, very importantly, what is the latest happening in the conversation. What is the latest happening in the conversation? Say, for instance, let's imagine you go out for a party, and in the party, people are talking about, the latest movie released by movie of, say, Rajinikanth or some actor. Okay. So when you go and take part in that conversation, you should know about the movie, and you can add 1 or 2 pointers about that movie. You can critically comment. You say, yes, good movie or bad movie. Whatever is your comment, you want to say. But you have not seen that movie, and you go to that conversation table, or people who are talking about that, and you talk about a movie which was released 2 decades ago by Rajinikanth. So nobody will be interested. So that is what I'm saying. Even when you interpret your result, you should look back to your literature, and you should be able to connect. That is where the success lies. That is where the success of writing a good report lies. So this requires, it's not a big rocket science, right? Why we call rocket science? Because as most of you know that, rocket science is supposed to be the very difficult subject. How do you say, sir? Rocket science is not, I'm not an engineer. How do you say that rocket science is a very difficult subject, sir? We had our former president, Dr. Abdul Kalam. He spent his entire life without wife. For what? To learn rocket science. So he launched many rockets, right? You all know about that. So he spent his entire life without wife to learn rocket science. So which means that is supposed to be a very tough subject, right? But whereas this writing skills, picking up these statistical tools, running them, and making an interpretation of that, writing it in our report properly, that is a skill that you can pick it up. That is a skill that you can pick it up over a period of time. That's a skill that you can pick it up over a period of time, right? So you should develop that skill. So what I wanted is, I wanted you to develop that skill to write about the meaning of the research in your report in a proper manner, by connecting with the literature, by writing in a very nice manner, so that the person who read your paper understand what you are trying to communicate, right? Okay. So now let us move on to some of the basics of stats. So in that way, if I will talk about 1 or 2 minutes about the statistics, because statistical thinking will one day be as necessary for effective citizenship as the ability to read and write. See, how do you define a person as a literate? A person should be able to make a signature. He should be able to read and write. So similarly, statistical thinking will also be like that. Who says this? H.G. Wells. I hope you all know about who is H.G. Wells, right? Then what is statistics? If you ask the next question, when you ask the next question, what is statistics? The answer is very plain and simple. So it's a numerical statement of facts or simply data. So numerical statement of facts or simply data. So scientific methods to help analysis and interpretation of data. So when I say scientific methods, we have different tools, we have different techniques. So it's obviously a science. Whether I run the data, I will also get the same answer. Whether you run the data, then you will also get the same answer. That's why we say that it is a science. Then it's a measure based on sample observations. So this goes without saying that we all know, being researcher. So we always run with the sample and we try to make prediction about the population. Say, for instance, suppose you are living in the city of Chennai or whatever the city you are living, and you wanted to know about the, you got a project from government. The government is giving you some consulting assignments to you and ask, okay, you find out what is the income of people living in your city. Okay, very interesting question. You wanted to know what is the average income of people living in, say, Chennai city or whatever city you are living. And how do we go about that? It is very difficult to go and knock at the door of each and every house and ask the person who is living there, hey, what is your income, man? It is possible, but what happens? It will take a hell of a lot of time. It require a lot of time, and you have to hire so many people. So therefore, it is expensive and most time consuming. So to avoid this, what probably we can do? We can go with a sample. So you have four. You can select the sample based upon the different geographical locations, say east, west, south, like that, or on some other parameter, you decide to collect the data by means of a sample. So when you collect the data by means of a sample, you cannot just knock at the door of somebody and ask me, what is your income, man? So he say, get lost. Why he say like that? Because he is doubtful. He is doubtful of you. How come if someone walks into your home or someone knock at you and ask your income, do any of you will disclose? Definitely big no. Nobody will disclose our income. Nobody would like to disclose what is the income that you are earning, except to income tax people. Okay, to income tax people, you say what is the income that you are making, right? So, so generally people don't want to disclose their income. But for our survey, you wanted to know that information. So how do you elicit that information? By asking all indirect questions. By asking all indirect, because if you ask any person in the world, what is the income that you are making? Generally, people don't say truth. Generally, first of all, people will not respond. They ask you, when they ask you, sir, how much is your income, sir? They will ask you the reply question, why do you want to know about that? They ask you the reply question, why do you want to know about that? Are you from income tax? Like that, they have a suspicion, right? So instead of asking what is your income, what probably we can do, we can elicit the same information by an indirect manner. How? You can ask him, sir, how do you spend what are your typical monthly expenses? Okay, so you ask on what are the different gates on which you spend your money. So how much you spend on your essential, how much you spend on discretionary, how much you spend on various other activities, how much you spend on insurance, how much. So we know what is the expenditure of the person. Then you also ask him what is his savings pattern. So ask him how much you typically save out of your income. Say, do you save 20% of your income? So what are all the places you save your income? So like that you elicit information. So now you have both the data. You know the expenditure pattern of the respondent. You also know the savings pattern of the respondent. You know the expenditure pattern, you know the savings pattern. So from these two things, very easily we can calculate what is the income of the person, rather than asking that person, how much is your income, sir? Are you getting my point? So therefore, basically statistics, we try to measure a certain phenomena based upon the sample observations, and based upon the sample observation, we try to predict, or we try to describe about the population. We try to predict, or we are going to describe about the population, right? So if you track the word, actually, if you track what is the statistics, originally it has come from the term called status. The term statistics, what we are using today, that has originally come from the Latin word called status. So it's a Italian meaning is statistica, and German we call statistic, and French we call statistic. You can see the spelling differences, all referring to, very surprising, you will be very surprised to know, all the meaning, whether you call status or statistica in Italy, or you call statistic in German, or you can say statistic in French, all referring to political state. What are we saying, sir? Yes, you go and refer the dictionary, or you go and ask Larry Page. By the way, who is Larry Page? Google, right? We invariably ask him all kinds of questions, right? Okay, so you go and check Google. So the meaning of all these terms mean, don't do that now, you can do later. Okay, so if you ask this question to Google, the answer will come to with the same meaning called political state. What is the meaning of statistic? Original term, right? So earliest census population was carried out in Egypt. So there is a connection. So it is a political state, and the earliest census population was carried out in Egypt. So that's how the term is being drawn from statistica to statistics. If you track the origin in India, most of you know that even during the Chandragupta Maurya time, we used to keep all kinds of land records, and land records are being maintained even during the Todarmal's time, right? Akbar's time, you all know about that, right? During Akbar's. So that's a broad idea from where we are getting the term statistics. Now, when we talk about the statistical tools or statistical types, if you look at here, so broadly speaking, we have three types. One is called descriptive statistics. So this descriptive statistics basically describe the basic measure of data. Say, for instance, I wanted to know about the income of people living in Chennai city. So the descriptive statistics will tells you that it describes, yes, there are so many number of people living in Chennai city. Based upon our sample, we say that the average income of people living in this part of the locality is this much, people living in this part of the locality is this much. So in an average overall, the people who are living in Chennai city are earning this much. So that describes about the basic measures of data. Then we have another branch of study or another field, we can say that analytical statistics. So what it does, it compares between two or more sets of data. So I compare between self-employed male and self-employed female, two set of data. I compare between the people living in the northern part of the city and western part of the city. I compare. So that is what we call analytical statistics. I compare between the people who are in this particular profession, say IT profession, versus the people in some other profession. I compare this one. So that is what we call as analytical statistics. Then we have another interesting field, what we use predominantly is called inductive statistics. So generalization on the basis of random observations. What is the generalization? As I said earlier, it is very difficult to go and knock at the door of every household in Chennai city and ask information or elicit information about their income pattern or expenditure pattern. You can do. I'm not saying that it is impossible. You can do, nothing wrong in that. One can do, but that involves significant cost. That involves significant cost. That involves significant time. So to save the cost and to save the time, what normally we do a sample observation. And based upon the sample, we are going to generalize. Yes, generally people in Chennai city. So this is what is the typical, the average monthly earnings of each person. Like this, we can arrive at that one. Then comes the most important point. What we use in our research work is called inferential statistics. What is inferential statistics? It helps us in drawing inferences on the characteristics of population on the basis of the sample. So this is where we use by and large in our research report, we use by and large in our thesis, we use by and large while writing any research papers. Then we also have another dimension called applied statistics. What is applied statistics? So application of statistical methods to the problems and facts of real life as they exist. So then inferential is not real life. Of course, inferential is also real life. But what there we are doing, in inferential, we are trying to make inferences about the population based on the sample. We are trying to make inferences. Applied statistics, for the problem in your hand, you wanted to find out some solution. For the problem in your hand, you wanted to find out the solution. What it could be a problem in your hand? For instance, every day, imagine every day you are commuting from your home to office. And when you travel in the street on a particular road, when you go, there is always a traffic. There is always a traffic. So what you do, we'll curse the traffic. Oh, people are not properly, no traffic discipline. We'll curse the traffic and then we'll move on. No, none of us, including myself, nobody thought about that. Can we arrive at any solution for this problem? Can we arrive at any problem, any solution for the problem? Like that, for any real life problem, you can use statistical tool to arrive at the problem. So that is what we say that applied statistics. How do you use statistics over there? Yes, okay, we can use statistics. You can find out what is the peak hours, what is the average vehicles who are passing that particular road. So in which time we are getting the more number of vehicles are passing. So you can plan accordingly, and accordingly you can take some call by looking at the data or by looking at the numbers. So this is the part where we are going to focus more. We will talk more about the inferential statistics, and we also talk more about the applied statistics. When I say applied statistics, there is a problem in my hand. I wanted to find out the solution. So if I find out the solution, people can use my solution. What are the recommendations? People can use that and they can implement that so that the traffic, in this example, I talked about that traffic congestion. So people can use those statistical data. People can use your inferences, and based upon that, they may probably ease the traffic. So we can look at in both the dimension. We can look at the dimension related to inferential, and we can look at the dimension applied statistics. Okay. So in this part, how do we design a study? So designing a study, it could be anything. Designing a study could be a research paper, or it could be a PhD thesis report, or even it could be a sponsored research. Say government of say sometime ago, you all know there is a separate ministry in our country called Ministry of Commerce. Sometime ago, when I was in Shillong, the Ministry of Commerce asked to IIM Shillong, can you do a study? What is the export potential for the Northeastern states? Because as some of you may know, Northeastern state is very unexplored state by many people, because people have a different view. No, Northeast is always a very rare place. Assam and above, how do you people live there? So very difficult. Like people have a different opinion. So whereas Ministry of Commerce wanted to know, they realized that that region have a very good potential. They wanted us to study about what is the export potential for the Northeastern region. So I myself and a colleague of mine, we did a study. So how do you design a study? It could be it's an applied work. So you find out the export potential, inform to the ministry, and the ministry will design for those sectors, some schemes, those sectors they can provide some incentive to get into the export, right? So how do we go about with the designing a study? So typical academic research or whatever the article you wanted to write in journal. So I'm saying broadly you can keep this format. Again, this will vary from your journal to journal, but broadly you can keep this one. For instance, normally we start with an intro. And then we dwell into lit review. So the lit review is the most important point and critical point. Like as just a few minutes ago, I said that there are people in a party, people are talking about that. In a dinner table, people are talking about that. So they are talking about the very recent movie released by Rajinikanth. So when you wanted to be a part of the conversation, you should know about what is the latest happening. That's the most important point. So reading or doing a literature review is most important. Now what happened? I'm talking even many of the PhD students also. So a student is doing a PhD under me. So until he completes his PhD, he is up to date on the literature review. You can ask him even 2021, what was the paper came in the month of February. He will tell you exactly the name of the author, the name of the journal, everything he will tell you in fingertip. Once when the thesis is done, submitted, got the degree award, got a job and get into the profession, then he will not look at what is the updated thing on the literature. So that is a very bad thing. You should keep on reading irrespective of the fact whether you are writing a paper or not. So you may not be writing a paper for next 2 years because you are very busy. Just now you joined teaching, you completed your PhD, and just now you joined teaching. And those who are joining teaching as a first what we need to do? We need to establish, yes, I'm a good teacher. You already proved you are a good researcher. You already proved that you are a good researcher. How did you prove? You already have a PhD, you have 4 or 5 papers in your CV. So you already proved you are a researcher. You take up a job in the industry or you can take up a job in academics. When you take up a job in academics, so you need to prove to the students, you are not only a good researcher, you are also a good teacher. So how do you prove that? You have to teach very well. Because there are people with 10 years of experience, 20 years of experience. They are also teaching in the same term with you, right? You need to compete with them. So you need to teach really well and get the good feedback and get the good name among the students. Yeah, that Professor so-and-so is a very good teacher. He teaches very well. Like that you should get. Right? Because of that, you are slightly out of touch on your literature. So then, again, the same story. When you go for a party, people are talking about the Rajinikanth's latest movie, but you've not seen that movie. You've not seen the movie. You've not seen the review for that movie. So you have no clue about that. So you cannot participate in that conversation. I repeat, you cannot participate in the conversation. If at all you wanted to participate in the conversation, then what you have the information? You have information about the Rajinikanth's previous movie. So you have no clue about this new movie. Are you getting my point? It's a very, very important point. Many students commit mistake over here. So whether you write a paper or not, keep an update on what's happening in the field. Okay, what is the latest paper which created a lot of buzz in the market or in the field? Okay, which is the paper which is very often cited in the year 2021. You can look at that. Now all the informations are available in your fingertip. There is no need to go here and there. Now all the informations are available at your fingertip. What is the most cited research paper in the year 2021 in the field of corporate governance? You need not go anywhere. Where do you get? Suppose if I wanted to know what is the most cited research paper in the year 2020, for instance, in the year 2020 in the field of corporate governance, where can I get this information? Anybody? Where can I get this information? I wanted to know in the year 2020 the most cited research paper in the field of corporate governance. Where can I get this information? Or can I get this information or not? Yes, anyone who have an experience?
Sir, Web of Science, sir.
Yeah, Web of Science. Okay, very good. Then Web of Science, very good. Then
Scopus.
Google Scholar,
okay,
sir.
Scopus, okay.
Google Scholar.
Google Scholar, very good answer. Google Scholar, yeah, that's the Google Scholar, Web of Science. These are the places we can get. You can get to know about the most cited paper. I have no time to read all the paper. I have no time to read because I'm teaching. I mean, for instance, I'm saying that because you people who just completed your PhD and just pick up, teaching as your career or teaching as your profession, or you joined in a company. You joined in a company as an investment banker, or you joined in a company as an investment analyst. I don't think that if you complete PhD, you should come only to teaching. Many of my students are working in corporates. They are getting much more salary than me, much more salary than the academics. Of course, the pressure is also more at the same time. The pressure is also more, but they also get a much more salary also, right? Because don't think that if you complete PhD, you should come to only teaching profession. There are plethora of jobs available for you, even in companies also. Okay, fine. Anyway, so you take up a job in a corporate, or you take up a job in academics. So you have no time to read. At least read the paper which is most cited in the year 2020 in the field of corporate governance. Sir, why is corporate governance? Because that is the field in which I am doing a research. Suppose somebody may be doing a research in earnings management. So read only that paper at least. I say we all have only 24 hours. We all have only 24 hours. We have our own priority, right? So given the time constraint, you should be updated on what is happening in your own field. That's my request to you all the researchers, young researchers, you should keep that point. So if you don't know what is happening in your own field, then you are thrown out of the market. I mean, when I say thrown out of the market, when you wanted to write a paper, you write with your past wisdom. You write a paper with your past wisdom. When you send your paper to any journal for publication, the reviewer in the desk will reject your paper, saying that this paper is not updated with the literature. Okay, this argument, they may say that this paper lacks the latest theory developed in this domain. I received such comment. I myself received such comments, though I published 36 papers. So sometimes they may say, you are not updated, man. So that's a slap on our face. Oh my God, don't take it negatively. So that's a hit on our head. So which means, so I think I'm missing something. So what I missed out. So go and look at Web of Science, go and look at Google Scholar. So what are the latest theory developed in that particular field? So look at that and get. So don't ignore this point, this literature review that is required until I complete my PhD. That is required until I complete that project. After that, I don't care about that. Please don't do that. At least read the paper which is very often cited, highly cited paper. You should read at least once. So you should read and know what that particular author is saying something new. Look at that. Okay, fine. See what I do. Even today I practice that. Earlier days when I was reading a paper, I used to take one A4 size worksheet and write in one single page. Write in one single page for one paper. I read what is that author is saying. So the main point I write in one hard copy of the page. Earlier days when I was a student. So now because of the advent of technology, because of the advent of computer, and Bill Gates will help us in doing all those things. How Bill Gates will help us? How come Bill Gates should help you? We all use Office software, right? So when you use Office software in the Word document, instead of using a A4 paper, nowadays I'm using only the Word document. Why are you writing that on by reading the paper? Is it not enough? Yes, that's enough. You translate that on what is your understanding. You are not copying. I repeat, you're not copying this paper into the Word document. You write on your own what is your understanding on the paper written by the author, on your own handwriting or on your own typewriting, you put it in a Word document. So that at any point of time, you can retrieve the document. At any point of time, I retrieve the document. Even today, I'm telling the same story to my scholars. So whenever my scholar, I ask him to read 5 papers, then he will give me 5 single-page write-up. Then he will give me 5 single-page write-up. No single word should be copied from the paper. It should be completely written by the student on what is his understanding of the paper. What is his understanding? So literature review is most important. Don't ignore that particular point. Okay, fine. So because obviously when you do a literature review, only then we can find out what is the research gap. Okay. So then we'll identify what is the research question or what is the research problem. Then we can arrive at what are the objectives. Then we can develop the hypothesis. And again, most important point, these hypotheses should come from the literature review. I repeat, the hypothesis should always come from the literature review. So whenever I receive a PhD thesis report, my common standing question, the researcher developed 17 hypotheses in chapter number so and so, in page number so and so. How did the researcher develop the hypothesis? That's my standard question. So how did you develop a hypothesis? Basically, you develop this hypothesis based upon the literature. So you say there is no difference between, so I'm writing. So in the corporate governance practices, there is no difference between family-owned companies' corporate governance practices and non-family-owned corporate companies' corporate governance practices. There is no difference. I say that. How do I make such comment? How do I make such comment? Based upon my past wisdom. What is my past wisdom? Based upon the literature. When I say past wisdom, I'm here depending upon the literature. So the hypothesis should always come from the literature. So don't forget this point. The hypothesis should always come from the literature. Okay. And from the literature, you should also build your entire paper with a strong theory. From your hypothesis, you should build your entire paper on the strong theory. So where do I get the theory, sir? Again, theory should come from the literature. Theory should come from the literature. So that's why I say that literature review plays a very major important role. So don't ignore, that's only one small chapter. No, sir, why are you giving so much importance for that, right? Don't think like that. So then we need to write the scope of the study. What is the scope of our study? What we are planning to do? You would write and limit. And then we go ahead with the sample and the period of the study. And then most important point, data collection. So you talk about how you are planning to collect the data. And many people say that they do through primary, they do through secondary. So whatever the method you are saying that. And this is what we are going to talk for the next, whatever the time available to us. We are going to talk about data analysis and discussion and interpretation. Now, nobody used the word interpretation. Nobody used the word interpretation. People only use the word called D and A, discussion and analysis. People use the word called D and A, discussion and analysis. So nobody used the word called interpretation. So we should also know about these practices. We should also know about these practices. So when we write in our report also, you put discussion and analysis. Don't put, interpretation of my statistical output. No, you should also gently write discussion and analysis, right? And then invariably, you should say, what are the limitations of your work? So the limitations of your work have a direct connect with the scope. Your limitations of the work have a direct connection. So I observed, generally people say, whatever you are not able to do, put everything in limitation. Okay, which is not good. Generally people say that whatever you are not able to do in your research work, you put all those things as your limitations. So please don't do that one. Don't do that one. You look at realistically, what are the limitations to the data that you collected? What are the limitations of your study? You write that. It is not like that, I wanted to go to moon, since I cannot go to moon, that's the limitation here. Don't put like that. Okay, you should look at your context and you look at your research question. In that context, what could be the probably limitation, which could be overcome by the researcher in the field when they do the same topic research next time. They may overcome this issue, right? Like that we can say, and then we can give the bibliography, and then we can provide the appendix. So this is the typical format of any research report or research article or what it may be. So now our focus is going to be on the data analysis and discussion. So now no more, as I said earlier, no more usage of the word called interpretation. We talk about discussion and analysis. So if you wanted to look at the whole idea into a single snapshot, it goes like this. So what we do, we assess the relevant and existing knowledge. So what is this existing knowledge? Existing knowledge is nothing but it is called past wisdom. What is that past wisdom? That is nothing but what we talked few minutes ago, literature review. Meaning which we wanted to know what people are already see. Whatever the question that we are going to ask, we are not the first people who are going to ask. We are not. I'm giving a very simple example. Suppose you are in finance domain. For instance, you wanted to know, for the sake of simplicity, how much debt a company should borrow. Simple question. Suppose there is one company who wanted to borrow some money, how much debt a company can borrow? Very simple question. The answer for the question, you are not the first person. I am not the first person. You are not the first person. Before us, there are already hundreds of people asked this question. Before us, already hundreds of people asked this question and they got some answer. I'm not saying that they got 100% answer. They got some answer. Those some answers are already being documented. Those some answers are already documented. So before we ask this question, we should look at the past wisdom. We should look at the past wisdom. That past wisdom is called as the literature review. So that is what I said, that you have to assess the relevant existing knowledge. Based upon that, you formulate your own concept. Okay, already people asked question, how much that is right for your company? Okay, so what I can ask differently, or what I can look at something in a different dimension. Okay, I will ask the question, how much that is good or how much that is right for chemical companies in India? Yes, definitely. It's a different question. Because already people asked about how much that is right for your company in a general phenomena. You are asking a specific question, how much that is correct or how much that is good for chemical companies in India. So context is different. We are talking about Indian context and we are talking about a different industry called chemical industry. So far, nobody find answer for this question. How much that is correct for chemical companies in India? Nobody got an answer. So you are trying to find out. So this is what you are making. You are formulating a concept and you are making a proposition. So proposition is something one step before hypothesis. I hope most of you know that. So hypothesis you write in a detailed document what you wanted to test. Whereas proposition is a kind of a crude form of hypothesis. So the refined form of proposition is called as a hypothesis. Then you do your research, design your research, collect empirical data, both primary, secondary, whatever you want to do. Then you analyze and evaluate data and provide explanation. And you provide explanation for the question that you already asked. And then you are not stopping, you are stating a new problem. Okay, this is what is the problem I identified. I find out a plausible explanation. It is not 100% correct. I find out a plausible explanation. What could be the new problem? What could be the new problem? So this is what broadly in each and every research paper, in each and every PhD thesis, each and every report that we are going to write, we will do that one. So where you and me are, this session is going to focus. This session is going to focus on analyzing and evaluating data, or discussion and analysis. This part is only what we are going to focus for the remaining part of the time. So when you look at the term data collection, so this is all you already know. For the sake of simplicity, we can say primary, secondary, we can say. So you already know what is called secondary data. So the secondary data definition only I wanted to stay here. So the data that has been previously collected for some other project other than in my hand, what I have. Because somebody collected some data for their purpose. Say for instance, just now I told you about, I wanted to study about the good, how much debt a chemical company should have. Already somebody collected data. Not on the debt component. Somebody collected the data about the profit and loss account, income statement of all the chemical company in India. Somebody collected, and I have a soft copy with them. It's available in the library. So I can take that data and use it for my purpose. So that is not fitting into my question. Somebody collected for some other purpose. I use that data for my work. So what is the advantage? So you build from the past data. What is the drawback? It is not designed for my purpose. It is not designed for my purpose. So they may be collecting the profit and loss account balance sheet. I'm interested in only one element. Right? So so there are different sources of data. You can collect the data from the internally from a company. You can collect data from the sales bill, or what we call invoices, customer profile, sales trend, accounts payable, profit margin. So you can collect all this information from the internally from a company's annual report, or from wherever you can collect that one. So external source of secondary data, published data in periodical, directory, indices, right? Syndicated commercial resources obtained as need basis. Now, right now we have a lot of databases. Now there are a lot of databases who provide data on need basis. For instance, some of you might know in the finance domain who are doing research know that. So NSC have a different database. Suppose I wanted to know about the independent directors in India. So this is a separate database. Suppose I wanted to know about the auditors in India. So this is a separate database available. On payment, I will get all the information. About the auditors' details of all the companies in India. I can get that information. So that's what I said, that as need basis we can get the data. Right? So it's all technology driven, computer sources available online. So you all know about that, right? So now if you wanted to collect data about any company's financial data, no need to ask anybody. You can go to Bombay Stock Exchange website and you can collect all the information, annual report, everything you can collect at one go. There is no need to pay any money to anybody. So all the data are available to you freely from an authentic source. It is not you are collecting from anywhere. You are collecting all the data from the authentic source of Bombay Stock Exchange website or National Stock Exchange, right? So apart from secondary sources of data, two most common sources of data under primary sources are there. One is survey. This you all know very well. In primary data, we conduct survey, and second one we do experiment. Anybody who do experiment survey here in our audience? Anyone who do experiments? Anybody who do experiment study in you as a part of your research? Anybody in our any participant who do experiment? Because experiment study is a quite time-consuming affair, and they are very valuable. Though it is a time-consuming affair, that requires a special skill set. The experimental study require a special skill set, but they have a great value in terms of publication. For instance, one of my student who is in NUS right now, he is doing a survey, very interesting survey. The behavior of people when you pay them money to use less electricity. So for instance, in the NUS university students hostel, what they do, they will say that if you use 2 units of power less, meaning which you don't use your AC or keep your AC at a particular temperature, or you reduce use of AC, they say that we will give you $10 to you. Very simple. It's an experiment. So somebody is giving you $10 for what? For using less amount of AC. So normally, typically you run the AC for 12 hours. So now if you run your AC for 10 hours, somebody is giving you $10. So by paying the money, will you change the habit of the people? over there, something like that. It's a very interesting study they did, and they got a very fantastic result, and it's being published in some of the very top class journals in the world, right? Anyway, so that's why I asked you whether any of you are doing the experimental study or not. That require a different skill set. Different methodology. You need to use that one, right? If you ask somebody in experiment study, for instance, if you ask someone, do chicken soup is effective in preventing cold? So you give chicken soup and measure how many get cold. That's called experiment. You ask in the survey, you ask this question, right? You ask question, do chicken soup is effective in preventing cold? So you ask yes or no, what are the answer? In the experiment, you actually give chicken soup and measure how many of them are getting cold, right? That's what experiment, before, after, that is what the most common thing. Or you take several group, do something to each group and then compare them, right? So that is what is experiment. And this you must already know the measurement of data through the scales. So most of you know this. Most of you know this measurement of data. So what can we measure? You can measure technically everything. What are you saying, sir? You can measure technically and theoretically and practically. You can measure everything in the world. So then when I say this one in the class, some students will ask, obviously very interesting question. Sir, can you measure the love and affection? Can you measure the love and affection? Can you measure the love and affection shown upon you by your mother? Can anybody in the class say that, sir, my mother is having upon me 20 kg love, sir, love and affection. My mama loves me 20 kg. Somebody can say, no, sir, my mother is loving me 25 liters, sir. Somebody can say that my mother is loving me 40 meter. Can you measure love and affection in liter, in kg, in meter?
No, sir.
Definitely big no. But in social studies, we need to measure this unobservable phenomena. This is what we call unobservable. So love and affection, we can't see, we can't touch, we can't, but we can realize, right? We can feel. But you wanted to measure that. How do you measure that? It's a very difficult task, no? Right? Just I'm saying, for instance, in social science, I'm saying, for instance, you got some research work and you wanted to know how much love and affection the mother is having on the hostel student, right? So you ask your own student. Imagine everything is all right, no pandemic, and students are in the college hostel, and during the term break they go to their home. During the semester break they go to their home. On the day when they go to the home, before going they call their mother and say, "Mama, I will be coming today for dinner. I will be coming to home at 8 o'clock," something like that. So on the day when the boy or when the child arrive home at the day night 8 o'clock, when he go to the dinner table, the dishes that he liked the most are being served by his mother. So that is the indication or showing up of the love and affection shown by the mother. That's one way in which you can measure. Similarly, the boy went to home. 1 month vacation is over. Now he's coming back to the university or to the institute, back to the studies. So when he come, as usual, right? Normally we all have experience during our childhood days. Father will make a calculation. Okay, you are going back. So you are going to be how many days, how many months you are going to be in hostel? Okay, next 6 months. Okay, what's your university fees? What is your hostel fees? He did his own calculation. Okay, take this money, this much money. So that is what we call official pocket money from the father. That is what we call official pocket money from the father. He do his calculation and do everything, and he is giving the money. Okay, and suppose before we depart from our home, normally our mother will ask, come in a husky voice, and take the boy to inside the kitchen, and the mother has some own reserve. She has some reserve rupees like that he is having. So she pick up those money and give it thrust in the pocket of the son. Take this money, take this money. This which we call unofficial pocket money. Am I right or not? So during our childhood, many times you and me must have got this money from our father. Father gives something called official pocket money. Mothers will generally give, even today, mothers will give something called unofficial pocket money. So without the knowledge of the father, she gives something from her own saving, she gives it to the child, right? So these are the ways in which one can ask question and measure what is called as the love and affection. So that's more like a social science. We talk into the realistic thing. How do you measure, say, for instance, corporate governance? So why are you talking about corporate governance? That is the area I tried to do some research. So when you wanted to talk about corporate governance, how do you measure? Can you say that most of you know that there is a body called Institute of Company Secretaries of India who give every year an award. The name of the award is ICSI Golden Peacock Award for Corporate Governance. ICSI Golden Peacock Award for Corporate Governance. So whatever the company who did best practice in corporate governance, they give one award. The name of the award is called Golden Peacock Award for Best Corporate Governance. So last year, Infosys got this award. So how come in India, if you observe, there are 4,700 listed companies are there. Many companies are unlisted. I'm talking about only companies which are listed in Indian stock market, in Bombay Stock Exchange. You are having around 4,000, roughly, I'm saying that. 4,700 companies are listed. Out of the 4,700 companies, how did that ICSI pick up the Infosys as a best corporate governed company, well-governed company, and they awarded this Golden Peacock Award? Because the term corporate governance, we can't measure. You can't measure. Okay, Infosys is having 25-liter corporate governance. No, TCS is having only 10 meters. So ITC is having 12 kg corporate governance. We can't measure. So why we can't measure? Because very simple reason, it is unobservable. It is unobservable. So how do you observe that one? Because it's a construct. It's a construct. You can't directly measure. Then what do we do in research? We use something called, which most of you know, called proxy variable. So since I cannot observe love and affection, then I asked the boy, man, you went to home on the leave. So on that day, when you are in vacation, the dishes that you like the most are being served here by mother. He says yes. So which I can very strongly say, yes, that boy's mother have love and affection on this fellow. I ask him, when you depart from your home, do you got any unofficial pocket money from your mother? Yes. So that's another evidence. Because you can't directly observe love and affection. Okay. So we are using the proxy variable. Same story for corporate governance also. I can't measure how much is the corporate governance. So how do I measure? I calculate how many independent directors are there in your company. How often your board meeting happens. Whether all the independent directors are attending in the board meeting. Whether the independent directors are actively contributing for the decision-making process in your company. So like that, you ask different questions. So through that, you can try to measure what is corporate governance or not. Whether it's a well-governed company or ill-governed company, like that we can arrive. So therefore, theoretically speaking, as well as practically speaking, we can measure everything. We can measure everything. We can measure everything, whether it's a state of being, physical, demographic characteristics, age, income level. We can measure the state of mind, mental attitude, beliefs, right? We can measure the state of intention, expressed plans of future action. We can ask them through survey, or we ask them through the future intention. The state of behavior, we can record that. Say shopping habits of people over there. Say for instance, now in this pandemic, you must be noticed, most of the people are very much health conscious nowadays, especially after the pandemic, right? But people are caring more about doing more physical work, or people are caring more about going to gym, or people are caring more about running in a treadmill, something like that. So you are a treadmill manufacturing company. You wanted to know, is there any difference in the buying behavior of treadmill between male and female? You wanted to know. Why you want to know? If you know that, accordingly you can give an advertisement program. Accordingly you can design your advertisement, right? So like that we can measure technically everything. So the objective of goal of measurement is it should be free from error. That is most important. You can measure anything in the earth, but the only major objective is whatever you are measuring, that should be free from error and should have a consistent result. So for that we have different statistical tool. As some of you may know that we have certain statistical tool, what reliable statistics tool we have. So through that we can measure. So basically there are 4 types of measures which you already know. So one is called nominal, ordinal, interval, and ratio. So for practical purposes, we use interval scales and ratio scales almost like one and the same, but still there is a small difference between them. So what is nominal scales? What is called nominal scale? So the objects are assigned to mutually exclusive labeled categories. No relationship among categories. No ordering or spacing are implied. So only possible arithmetic operation is a count of each category. Just now I told. So what is the gender of the person? Male, female. Okay. So like that we are asking. So the number which represents an object or person. For instance, are you bored or not bored? So there will be only 2 options. Sir, I am bored with your class, sir. No, I am not bored, sir. You are talking something useful to me. Only 2 possible. Are you bored or not? No, sir. When you started the class, it was very interesting. After that, I lost interest, sir. You can't say like that. So either is it bored or not bored. Are you a male or female? Do you like or dislike? So like something like a pin code. So the pin code cannot be replicate. So when there is a pin code of 620001, that's only one location. You cannot see another 620001 elsewhere. Are you getting? So this is what is called as the nominal scale we can say. Then it could be like this, categories, gender, ethnicity, as I said, male, female. Are you an Indian, Asian, African, right? Like that you ask on the basis of the ethnicity, you ask somebody, right? So then we have something called ordinal scale or ordinal data. So here what we do, we rank the objectives and arrange them in the order by some common variable. That's the most important point. What it could be? Numbers representing a group or object or respondent, but there is a ranking. That's the most important point. There is a ranking. What is that? For instance, customers' preference towards products. Customers' preferences towards products. Say, do you like sweet? Yes. Then what kind of sweet you like? I like chocolate, I like ice cream, I like laddu or something like that. I'm giving my preferences. So do you like sweets? Yes. What sweet you like? I like chocolate, I like ice cream, I like laddu. So like that I say that. Okay. So we ask them the preference. So we can tell not only the sweet that I like, but also the order. Yes, I like chocolate first, ice cream next, laddu third. So this is my order of priority. This is my order of priority. But this data tells us nothing about the difference between value. I said first chocolate, second ice cream, third laddu. That's all. So the difference between 1 and 2 and 2 and 3 is not equal. Most important point. The difference between 1 and 2 and 2 and 3 are not equal. So that is the crux. So because you asked me, do you like sweets? I said yes. What sweets you asked me? I said my first liking is chocolate, second liking is ice cream, third liking is towards laddu. So I'm giving you a priority. I'm giving a priority saying 1, 2, and 3. So the difference between 1 and 2, 2 and 3 are not equal. That's the most important point, right? So then we have something called ordinal ranking. So rank ordered categories, first, second, third, but unequal interval. For instance, horse race. So the horse which comes for the first rank, second rank, third rank, only we say that the difference is not same. The last one, interval scale. So the numbers are assigned to objects that represent categories, rank order, as well as how much the object is preferred on the attribute being measured. Here, the differences can be compared. Most important point. Here, the differences can be compared. So if your data is an interval scale, we can do a whole lot of the entire multivariate statistical tool we can use. We can use the entire range of statistical operations. For instance, instead of asking people whether they are bored or not, we can measure the boredom along a 10-point scale or 5-point scale on 11-point on a 7-point scale, right? So that's what that's what the interval scale, right? Categories are approximately equally spaced or ordered. Strongly disagree, agree, strongly agree. Something like a scale we can use. Then what is ratio scale? This is the type of an interval scale with a meaningful 0 point. So this is in this scale, it's possible to say how many times greater or smaller one object is than the other. For instance, someone has scored 8, which is twice two times of someone who scored 4. But it's difficult to say the data is interval or ratio. So in social science researcher use ratio and the interval scale, we use it as the same. So therefore, don't worry whether we really have a true 0 point or not. We can use ratios. We can use the we can use the ratio scale, interval scale. We can use interchangeably. We can use, right. So these are some examples of ratio scales. For instance, equal interval with 0. So length, weight, height. Say a person whose weight is 120. So the another person is 60 kg. So suppose my weight is 120. I'm weighing 2 times of the another person who is weighing only 60 kg. I'm weighing 2 times. Suppose the money. So I'm having 10,000 in my purse. The other person is having say only 2,000 in his purse. So I have 5 times more money than my friend who is sitting next to me. So in this case, equal interval 0 is there. But nevertheless, we need not worry much about that aspect. So if a nominal scale is used, the data is very limited. So we can use only very limited statistical tools. We can do mode, frequency, chi-square, like that. If you have ordinal scales are used, analysis of data is also limited. What you can do? You can do median, we can do range, you can do mode, frequency distribution. Like this is like traveling in a very small car. If your data, please look at this picture. If your data is nominal scale or ordinal scale, it's like driving in a very small size car. Okay, you all know, right? When you travel in a small size car, you cannot go beyond 100 km speed, and the space is very small. Safety is a concern, right? There are various parameters, and you cannot when you travel in a road which is not very good, then you will get more bumping, right? So many things. But if your data is an interval scale or ratio scale, then you can do all kinds of complex statistical tool you can do. This is like, riding a Cadillac car. I hope you all know Cadillac car. Very comfortable, very luxurious. When you ride in a car, you don't feel as if you're riding in a car. So you keep this to pick in your mind. So if my data is nominal or ordinal, my statistical analysis is limited. If my data is interval or ratio, my statistical analysis can be much, much better. It's like riding a Cadillac car. Okay. So now what type of a scale you can measure? So I asked you some question, you can skip this one. So while measuring a data or a construct or a contribute or conjecture, whatever the word you can call, similarly while choosing the scale, there are 2 points you got to keep in mind. One is about reliability and second is about validity. So this is also the most common question which I ask normally when I look at any PhD thesis. So generally when you collect data, you measure something which cannot be directly measurable. For instance, love and affection, which we spoke. For instance, we spoke about the corporate governance. You wanted to measure about that. So when you wanted to measure about these things, it cannot be directly observed. It cannot be directly observed. So since it cannot be directly observable, you are measuring it through the proxy. So in that case, what is the reliability of that proxy? Okay, that is the very common question which we will ask. When I say what is reliability means the degree to which measures are free from error. So why it should be free from error? You recall the other slide which I showed you. The objective of measurement is free from error. The objective of measurement is free from error. So reliability is the most important point. So when I say reliability, the literature talks about stability, internal consistency, and how do you check all those things? That's the most important point. How do you check that there is a reliability is there in your data? Somebody is asking you, or you submit your paper and the reviewer is asking you this question. So we can say I do a test retest method. Then you can do that. I did an equivalent form, or you can say that I split my data into two off. So this test retest and the splitting off I used very often because in finance you need to these two things only, right? Splitting off means the same data set you split them into two different parts. You run the test and in both the test I'm getting the same answer. I'm getting the same answer in both the tests. So test retest. I do one test and again I retest with some other sophisticated method and I arrive at the same answer. So that is what is called reliability. So these are some of the methods: test, retest, right? So what literature says that the degree to which the reliability is there are statistical software which will tell you the reliability. So for that, very commonly, most of you know, there is something called Cronbach alpha. So most of the statistical software will report, or if you ask, they will report what is the Cronbach alpha of your the reliability of your data. So for that, we can the Cronbach alpha should be minimum 0.7. I written here. So this is the 0.7 is the Cronbach alpha. So who says this should be 0.7? There's a very popular professor in social sciences called Nunali. He wrote in his book on research methods. He said that one should get a minimum of 0.7. The Cronbach alpha, so that then the reliability is high. Okay, so nowadays we will get all this information readily available. You can do that. How do you know what is the validity of your data? So the ability of a scale to measure what it was intended to measure. So I asked some question to a particular person. So what is the how did you spend your money, or how did you save your money? So I wanted to measure the saving habits, or I wanted to measure the investment habits of the people. So am I measuring exactly the same thing what I wanted to measure? That is what this question validity is asking. So there are different types of validity, as some of you may know. Content validity, then we have something called a construct validity, then we have criterion validity, then we have concurrent validity, then we have predictive validity. Like that, then we have different types of validities are there. Okay, so what is this validity? We can check on different methods: face validity, criterion validity. Like that, we have different types of validity. Construct validity, we can look at that, and there are some tools through which we can check and find out and do that one, right? Okay. So with this background, so we did a good background on what is statistics, so what is data analysis, and then how do we go about with the collection of data? How do we go ahead with the complete writing of a paper? Like that, we have some broad idea. Now, with this background, we move on to the most interesting area or the most interesting tool called correlation. So basically, in correlation, what we are trying to do, we are trying to test the relationship between two variables. We are trying to test the relationship between two variables, two or more variables. So what is this correlation coefficient? It is a statistical measure of the covariation, the variation in the two variables, covariation, or you can call the association between two variables. So that is what is called correlation coefficient. Say for instance, you spend some money on advertisement. You spend very commonly, right? You spend some money on advertisement. Whether the advertisement expenditure yield you any increase in sales. You release an ad in the newspaper because I released ad in the newspaper, whether it it is being utilized into my sales. I wanted to know. So we can use correlation. We can use correlation, right? The amount that I spent on advertisement and the increase in my sales. So that we can use the correlation. So this is what is the formula. Nowadays, if you ask me, there is no need to really worry about many formula because the machine will help us. You can ask the software to calculate the correlation for you. It will calculate you. If you really wanted to know how it works, then you can pay attention to this formula, how we are computing all those things. Nowadays, there is no need to look at mechanically or manually look at how correlation is being calculated. So now the machine will give you all the numbers. But what is important is how do I interpret? How do I interpret? Right? There is no need to memorize any formula. There is no need to manually calculate how do I got these numbers, sir. There is no need to understand. What I want is, because the machine will help you, the software will help you to understand that. I wanted you to make a better interpretation, better analysis and discussion. That is where our focus, our energy should be sent, rather than memorizing the formula and working out that. Please don't do that one. Okay. So the Pearson's product moment correlation, it provides a numerical summary of the direction and strength of the linear relationship. What is this linear relationship? Direction, we'll talk about that. So what is the direction and strength? When we say direction and strength, we say positive or negative. That is what is the direction. Strength, is it 0.95 or is it 0.15 or is it 0.55 or 0.75? What is that? That's the strength. So direction, positive or negative. Strength means, is it 0.95 or 0.15 or 0.52 or 0.43 or 0.78. So that is what we are talking about, the strength. Linear relationship between the two variables. And as most of you know that the correlation always ranges between plus or minus 1. The correlation always ranges between plus or minus 1. So as plus 1 stands for a perfect positive correlation and the minus 1 stands for perfect negative correlation. And when your correlation is equal to 0, there is no linear relationship at all, which means there is no correlation between the two variables that we are studying, right? Now, how a correlation, if you plot in a graph, these are the different variables you are plotting it in a graph. When you plot this correlation in a plot, it observes like that. There is no correlation. There is no correlation, all scattered. We call this as a scatter plot. You put it in the scatter plot and find out that there is no correlation. So if you look at here, everything is a perfect negative. Everything is towards your negative. This side, perfect positive. How do you say perfect negative? You got a correlation minus 1. See here. You got a correlation minus 1. This side, I can say that there's a high positive correlation because you got 0.98. Positive, how do you say? Direction. Because it's a positive direction. How do you say strength? 0.98. So you call this as a high positive correlation. Okay. Then we talk about the size of the effect. So size of the effect means plus or minus 0.1 correlation comes means small effect. 0.3 medium effect. 0.5 large effect. So broadly speaking, the literature talks about only these three numbers. 0.5 and above, generally speaking. 0.5 and above is generally considered as having a larger effect. 0.3 around that range, medium effect. 0.1 technically very small effect. So what are the factors that you should consider while interpreting a correlation? That's the most important point. First and foremost point, non-linear relationship. When two variables are related on a non-linear fashion, which means it could be a curvilinear, the correlation will seriously underestimate the relationship. So one of the basic assumption is when we study about the two variables, there should be a linear relationship should present. If the variables are not linearly related, then the correlation will seriously underestimate the strength. Strength means 0.1, 0.3, 0.5. That's now we spoke about that. That will underestimate that one. So outliers, this is a very important point, especially when you do any type of analysis, especially when you do correlation. So you should be very doubly, triply careful on dealing with outliers because they have a dramatic effect, especially on the correlation. I'm talking especially on the correlation, and most especially when you have a very small sample of 100 observation or 200 observation or 300 observation. For instance, very often, most of you must be working in some B school. The press people will ask, or very recently, the NIRF ranking is out. That's 2 days ago. The NIRF ranking is out. So the NIRF ranking people will ask you a very common question, or the press people will ask you a common question. What is the average salary, sir, of your students? Very common question. Students will ask you, what is the average salary, sir? So what generally we say, we don't say average salary, we are very clever. So we say, our median salary is this much. So why we say median salary this much? Because this outlier will influence dramatically. I repeat, the outliers will influence dramatically all the measures of central tendency, and most importantly, it will influence your correlation also. For instance, you have say 200 students are studying in your institute, and out of the 200 students, imagine say 10 students got an offer in Dubai in one company. 10 students got an offer in Dubai in one company. So you convert that Dubai currency into Indian currency, and when you convert that, out of the 20 students, 10 students who got a package of 30 lakhs. Imagine 10 students who got 30 lakhs. So when you include the 10 students in the computing average, if you put that, your average salary will go up like anything. How come your average salary will go up? Because we have 10 students who are getting 30 lakh salary. So out of these 200, 10 people who got the highest salary, we call them as outliers. Whereas all other people are getting a salary around 15 lakhs, 12 lakhs, 10 lakh like that. There are 10 students who got 30 lakhs. The moment when you include the 10 students in your data point, include that, then your average will pull up like anything. Similarly, you got some students, really you may not be able to find, very difficult to place them. Somehow you find out a company, some PSU has come, you push them, you requested them, you push them, and they are getting placed at around 5 lakhs. Bottom 5, let's say bottom students. So when you put up these bottom students also, what will happen? Your average will take a dip. So that is the drawback of it. These outliers have a dramatic effect, not only on correlation, the outliers have a dramatic effect on all the measures of central tendency you have. So that is why normally what we will do, we will trim the top 1 percentile and the bottom 1%. I'm saying from the finance domain. In the finance domain, say for instance, I'm studying about the stock market return of the last 3 years or of last 5 years. So very volatile. Very volatile, you must be observing in the stock market behavior, very volatile for the last 3 years at least. So what I will do, I collect the data and remove the top 1% outlier, and I will trim that. I have to take it out, and the bottom 1% outlier, I will remove that one. Because if you keep that outlier in your data sample and you do any analysis, that cannot give you the realistic picture. Okay. So how do I know whether I have an outlier or not? One simple way, if you have a small sample, you run a scatter plot. You run a scatter plot and you can calculate that. Okay. And you can find out very easily graphically. This we already talked some few minutes ago, we spoke, right? Correlation does not lead to causation. Most important. Correlation does not lead to correlation. I told you one example at the beginning, right? So there is a house burglary on every Saturday in one locality. And the police officer noticed that on that locality, the sale of ice cream is also more and the house burglary is also more. So he run a statistical tool called correlation, and he find out there is a perfect positive correlation of 0.99. So you cannot ban sale of ice cream. You cannot ban sale of ice cream because correlation does not lead to causation. Okay. So there's another simple example. There is a high correlation between rooster crow and rising of the sun. So you may be in whatever the part of the country today. So rooster crows, then sun rises every day. So then can you say that because every day rooster crows, that is why sun is rising? Can you say that? Big no. Because the rooster crow does not cause the sun to rise, right? Okay. So another simple example, teacher salaries and consumption of liquor. Teacher's salary and consumption of liquor. Teachers' salaries are going up and the consumption of liquor is also going up. It does not mean all the teachers are drinking a lot of liquor. Okay, fine. So basically, the Pearson's product moment correlation is meant for interval scales or the continuous scales what we discussed. It can also be used for continuous and one categorical or dichotomous variables we can use that. For instance, the libido score and dosage. For instance, the JSS and gender. JSS is a score, right? And gender of a person. So if you look at the statistical software package, you can look at SPSS, or you can look at R, or you can look at Stata, or any software. If you look at that, SPSS, for instance, it will generate you 2 correlation. One is called bivariate correlation, another one is called as a partial correlation. We can conduct that one. Let us have one example. Maybe we can take a quick break of about 10 minutes, and then again we will resume and continue our discussion. Is it fine if I take a break of 10 minutes?
Yes, sir.
Excuse me,
yes.
sir.
Okay,
Sir, before going to take a break,
please explain once again reliability and validity difference by showing the PPT.
Okay, fine. Okay, fine. After the break, we will look at the. I will show you the slide and explain you in detail. No worries. Because I thought that my focus should be correlation, so I thought that's why I skipped. I will go back and explain to you again. No worries. So let us have a quick break of 10 minutes. Let's have a tea and then come back after 10 minutes, and then talk about reliability and validity.
மணி என்ன பண்ண சில பொண்ணு இரு 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 இரு. இந்தா போவண்டா.
உங்களுக்கு நெட்டு போச்சுனால
So shall we start? Yeah.
Okay, sir.
Explain the concept of a absolute zero point. The only distinction between nominal scale and rational scale is an absolute zero point. Could you just throw some light on that? It's a little confusing.
Yeah. Can you just type your question in the chat box because your voice is breaking? Because already one participant asked about the about reliability and validity. I will explain that. You kindly type your query in the chat box so that I can find out. Your answer is not very, voice is not very clear. So I could see Hemant Kumar raised your query. If you have a query, just type it in the chat box so that I can try to respond to you.
Yes, I do.
Okay, so whomsoever have a query, kindly type it in the chat box. Is there any thumb rule? Yes, of course. For what my friend Pramod is asking is there any thumb rule for validity? Yes, big yes. For validity, we have a thumb rule given. Sorry, for reliability, we have a thumb rule given by Nunali. That is equal to 0.7. I will talk about that shortly. No problem. I will answer your query. So I will, because we start with the reliability and the validity, and then if you have any other questions, I will take it up. Please type it in the chat box, or you can answer me once when we completed this topic. Right? Okay. So as already someone asked me before the tea break, somebody asked me, can you explain the concept of reliability and validity a little more? So let us spend 5 minutes on explaining that particular concept for the better understanding of everyone in the class. See, when is the question of reliability and validity comes? You should also understand that particular point. If I'm able to observe the phenomena directly, then there is no need to worry about reliability. Then there is no need to worry about validity because I directly observed the phenomena. So therefore, there is no need to worry about reliability and validity. When the question of reliability and validity comes, especially when you are observing a construct, or when you are observing an attribute, or when you are observing a conjecture. So what is these three words are construct, attribute, conjecture. So construct and conjecture are almost the same, where which there is a phenomena which I cannot directly observe. There is a phenomena which I cannot directly observe. For instance, the love and affection shown by your mother. So that cannot be measured. I cannot take a meter and measure how much love and affection mother is having. Okay, 10 meter. I cannot come and measure the love and affection with liter, 10 liter, 15 liter, 10 kg, 20 kg. We can't measure, right? So that is the scenario where in which the construct is not measurable or it cannot be directly observable. It cannot be directly observable. So therefore, what do? We choose a scale to measure that. Therefore, use such a scale to measure. Say we ask, we talk about an attribute. We try to measure the attribute, right? Or we try to measure the conjecture. We try to measure the construct. See, the basic point is there are certain phenomena we can't directly measure. Very simple. So in social science, even though you may not be able to measure, we may need to measure that for our research purpose. Okay. So what do you do in that scenario? We may not be able to directly measure that, but we use certain proxy variables. Since we cannot directly observe and use the proxy variables, then the question of reliability comes into picture. Please be noted. So the concept of reliability comes into picture only and only when I'm not able to observe the phenomena directly. Since I cannot observe the phenomena directly, what I use a proxy variable. or I use a proxy instrument, or I use a proxy variable. Through that, I try to measure whether that phenomena is present or absent, or what is the characteristics, right? So, for instance, as I said earlier before the break, I said I wanted to measure the corporate governance practices of a company. So, the corporate governance practices of a company cannot be directly observed. I cannot go and observe it. So, that can be measured through some proxy variable, like how big is your board? Okay, my board, there are 20 members are in my board. So, you note on that point. Okay, out of in your board, how many people are the independent director? Okay, 70% of my members in the board are the independent director. Okay, that's one. The third question, how often your board meets? Fourth question. So what are you trying to measure? By asking these different questions, we are trying to measure whether that particular company is practicing good corporate governance or not. Why are you asking this question? Because I can't directly go and measure. I can't directly go and observe the phenomena called corporate governance. So I measure it through the proxy variable called how many directors you are having, how many independent directors you are having, how often do you have a meeting, what is the, so whether any of the independent director will speak during the board meeting. Like that, I ask different questions. Since we are measuring it through a proxy, there is always a question about the reliability. There is always a question about the reliability, always a question about the validity. Somebody asked in the comments, sir, what is there any thumb rule? Is there? Yes, big yes. So what is reliability? Look at here. So the degree to which the measures are free from random error. See, I wanted to measure corporate governance, but since I can't measure corporate governance, I use a proxy variable. Since I'm using it through the proxy, how far this is free from error? How far this is free from error? Okay, so why do you wanted to have this phenomena free from error? So then only I will get the correct answer. See, the degree to which the measures are free from random error, and therefore it will provide me the perfect result. Therefore, it will provide me the perfect result. So that's called reliability. Now, how do you check reliability is there or not? There are different methods, mechanisms available. Out of these things, whatever I written in the board, I used personally these two things. So there is a tool called stability through which you can do internal consistency, test, retest, equivalent forms, splitting halves. I used to test the internal consistency. I normally use splitting the half. I will explain you what is that. Then to do the stability, we do test, retest method. I will explain you both. What is this splitting the half method? Say, for instance, I wanted to study about the, say, for instance, we all know well, I will share you one of my the work which currently I'm doing. Say, for instance, I'm studying about the companies which are listed in the stock market. As most of you know, all the companies are affected because of the pandemic. We all know very well. So how many companies pandemic affected? So the stock market crashed from 40,000 to 28,000, 28,000 or even below that also. Then it is being crashed, and how fast they recovered back. So my company got affected, but I'm recovered back very fast than the other players in the market. So that is what I'm trying to. I mean, myself and my friends are doing a small research work. Now, to test the reliability, we are measuring various phenomena over there. One of the phenomena is how resistant is your company to such kind of pandemic, or how fast you are coming back. How are you resistant? How you are resistant to this kind of pandemic? So that resistance is what we are measuring. So that resistance, I cannot go and directly measure how many liter resistance the company is having, how many kg the company is having. Okay, how many kilo it is having. I can't measure that. So in order to test that reliability, we use certain other proxy variables. These proxy variables are measuring the phenomena that we wanted to measure. We can check that. How can you check that? Say we are having observations of around, say, 12,000 observations. What we can do, take 6,000 into one group, take another 6,000 into one group. Okay, split that entire sample into two different parts. Run the same test. Whatever the statistical test you wanted to do, you do the same thing and look at the output. The output is the same. Whatever the conclusion I am getting, I repeat, not the answer. Whatever the conclusion I am drawing from the sample which I split in one side, I'm also getting the same conclusion from the other sample, means then my data is reliable. Are you getting my point? I split the sample into two parts, do the analysis here and do the analysis here. The conclusion I am deriving from the splitted sample should be the same. Suppose my splitted sample, I'm not getting the same answer, sir. I'm not getting the same answer. In one sample, I'm getting a different answer. Another sample, I'm getting. So then there is some question on reliability. Are you getting? So then there is another test which we use to check the stability of the data reliability called a test retest. Test retest is nothing but you do run a test and check that particular outcome, not output, outcome or the decision. Then again you retest the same data set with some other test, some other test you can run and check that. Because to test one phenomena, we can use multiple tests. So use one test A and find out what the answer you are getting. Then for the same data set, use test B and find out what is the answer you are getting. Still, you are getting the same conclusion. I repeat, not the same output. If you get the same conclusion, then our data is reliable. Is it clear for my friends? Is it clear? If you have a query, please ask.
Yes,
okay,
sir.
fine. Yeah, fine. So this is how we will do that one in real life, right? Now, the test retest I already told you. The test retest I told you, you administer this. I've written an example. Administer the same test to the same subject at two separate points. Say, for instance, midterm and final. Okay, you split half method measures the internal consistency of the test. Use the final exam and test the first half and the second half of the test. Okay, so do the same test 2 times to the same point. Okay, test retest. Okay, you in real life you administer one particular test and a statistical test and find out what is the outcome. Then again you apply some other statistical test and find out am I getting the same answer? Am I getting the same answer? You look at that, right? That's what I say. So are there any thumb rules are there? Yes, it is there. So generally we use one particular test called one particular test we use a statistical test. What is that? I forgot that name. We use one statistical test, what I told, to test the reliability. Cronbach alpha. Yeah. Cronbach alpha is the word. Please make note that point. Cronbach is the person who propounded this idea. Cronbach. Cronbach alpha. So what is this Cronbach alpha? This Cronbach alpha will tell you statistically, I repeat, statistically, whether my instrument is measuring what it is intended to be measured, or do I have the reliability on my measure. So the reliability test, statistical test, apart from these are the things which I said how to handle. These are the mechanism I told how to handle the reliability. If you wanted to do a statistical test for reliability, you have to depend upon a test called Cronbach alpha, which you will get it from any standard statistical package you get. If you are using SPSS or using R or you're using Stata, you get that reliability test. And there's an option to get the reliability test that answers the Cronbach alpha. That Cronbach alpha should be minimum 0.7. When you report the Cronbach alpha in your study, kindly cite Nunali 1978. Suppose I got a Cronbach alpha in my study says 0.78. So I say that my Cronbach alpha is 0.78 as prescribed by Nunali in 1978. You write that word, then reviewer will not ask even a single question. Reviewer will not ask you even a single question. That is with reference to reliability. Now when you move on to the validity, what is validity? The ability of the scale. Now we are talking about the instrument. The scale to measure what was intended to be measured. I wanted to measure corporate governance. So I asked a question, how many independent directors that you're having? That's not my question. I asked multiple questions. One such question is, how many independent directors that you are having? So what was my intention? I wanted to measure whether this company is practicing good corporate governance or not. So I asked a question called how many independent directors we are having. Okay. So this validity can be tested. There are different validity or that these are available standard in any textbook. You can see that. There is a content validity, very popular validity called content validity. There is another validity very popular called construct validity. These are the two popular validity normally one need to check. Content validity and construct validity. Then we also have something called criterion validity. This you can divide it into further concurrent validity. So how do you check that all those things? For instance, assess using reviews of coming attractions. Say for instance, face validity. So the test appears to be appropriate for the purpose of the instrument. For instance, the test appears to be fine at face value, which means how do you test that one? Assess using the reviews of coming attractions. We are talking about a movie. So criterion validity, a standard rule or test in which a judgment or decision can be based. Does it correlate with other measures of the same construct? For instance, used to predict how well it will do in the summer, used to determine how movie is currently doing comparing to the weekend or box office receipts. So we are talking about a movie. So in the context of criterion validity, we have two different things, predictive evidence and concurrent evidence. So we used to predict how well the movie will do. You release the movie during the summertime. Or concurrent evidence, so how much is the collection I'm getting as a box office receipt I'm getting. Through that, we can do that one. So this is called face validity. This is called criterion validity, right? So what is this called? Construct validity. So the validity of the abstract concept that can't be observed, like emotion. You can't measure directly. Anxiety, we can't measure directly. Intelligence, we can't measure directly. Achievement, we can't measure. So we can obtain correlation between the construct and other measure. For instance, imagine you are watching a horror movie. You are watching a horror movie. How much popcorn you are eating and your level of interest in the movie. You are very much interested in the movie. It's a very horror movie. So you don't even eat any popcorn. You watch the movie. Your eyes are glued to the screen. So the movie is not very horror. In the name of horror, they are making joke. Then you laugh and eat the popcorns. Are you getting? I just am giving a simple example on validity. Is it clear for you? Is it clear for the people who asked queries about the
Yes, sir.
validity and reliability? Yeah. So I could see one more question here. Duration between test 1 and test 2 for test and retest. Okay. See, test and retest means there are multiple ways of doing that one. One is you administer. What I meant here actually, test retest means, say for instance, I use a particular statistical tool to test my to check my observation, to test my observation, and I got one result. Now I administer another statistical tool which is applicable to that. I cannot use all kinds of statistical tool, which is a relevant statistical tool, and I apply that and try to find out the answer for that. Okay, to make it in a very crude form, okay, Madam Geeta, to make it in a very crude form, there is a snake which entered into our home. Imagine, there is a snake which entered into your home. So what we do, we try to kill it. It's a very poisonous snake. So probably it might bite somebody, so you all get scared. We might try to kill the snake. So you kill the snake, by using an iron rod, for instance. Then you got one wooden stick. You already killed the snake by hitting it on the head with an iron rod. Then you also wanted to hit it with a wooden stick. So why you wanted to do it twice, Madam Geeta? Or if you are around, why are we doing it 2 times? We already hit and we are reasonably sure that snake is dead. Okay. Again, we use the iron wood. Again, we use the wood, to beat the snake. So why are you doing like that?
Sir, to confirm whether it is.
Exactly same thing, madam. To confirm, because that's a poisonous snake. We have small children in the home. That's a poisonous snake. You wanted to doubly, triply ensure snake is dead. You wanted to doubly, triply ensure that the snake is dead. So you use wooden piece also with you beat that snake. You already beat the snake with the iron rod. You beat it with the wooden piece now again. Why? You wanted to doubly, triply. So that is what test retest meant. Test retest means that is what it meant. Are you getting?
Yes, sir, I got it, sir. Sir, my doubt is what is the duration? Is 1 week or 10 days between test A and test B, sir?
So what kind of thing you are observing? What are you observing in the test 1 and test 2?
Emotional regulation, sir. My
Then you
topic
have to look at your literature. Then you have to look at your, because I'm not an expert in your emotional domain. Because when you give more gap, probably the respondent might get influenced by something else.
Yeah, fine, sir.
So you have to look at your own literature, what or how the people are doing. You have to look at that, and accordingly you can do that one. Okay?
Yeah, sure, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay, fine. Yeah. So any other queries? I could see only Madam Geeta Sundararaj. Okay. Fine. So then we will go ahead with our plan. So we are talking about correlation. Okay. So this is a very important point when we talk about correlation, there is no connection between correlation and causation. Because you cannot assume that every day morning rooster is crowing. That's why the sun is rising. Okay, so like ice cream is selling or in that part of the city. So there is a lot of burglary is happening or housebreaking is happening. Okay, like that. Okay, this already we spoke about that. Yeah. So how do we? I don't know how you people are familiar with that. So one can use SPSS or one can use R Studio or one can use Stata. If you use SPSS, I have the commands for that. You can check or you can use it over here. I have not installed in this machine SPSS. Anyway, I can show it to you. So, for instance, to increase the sales, the motor vehicle design engineers wanted to focus their attention on aspects of the vehicle that are important to customers. So, you are the R&D department. Say, for instance, there are many engineers who work in the R&D department of a vehicle. And they wanted to focus what customer will look at that when somebody buy a vehicle, they will look at that, so that we can improvise on that. For instance, this is a very common question you could know. Whatever the vehicle you are buying, even when you buy a Benz car also, the common question what people will generally ask is how important is fuel efficiency. So if you put 1 liter of fuel, how many kilometer this car will go? That's a very common question we ask, right? That's what we think. How important is fuel efficiency with reference to sales? So one way to measure is calculate the correlation between the past sales data and the fuel efficiency. So you collected the information regarding the various car makes of motor vehicles, various car vehicles of motor vehicles, and then it's collected and kept it in one file. I will show it to you. It takes some 30-40 seconds to open. Yeah. So I hope this is visible. So I will show you what information we are having. If you could observe here, here we have information about who is the manufacturer of the vehicle, what is the model of the vehicle, what is the sales, what is the 4-year resale value, what is the vehicle type. Okay, we have different types of vehicles. You can observe here. So you have here car, you have truck. You have car and you have truck. Then what is the price? What is the engine size? What is the HP of the car? What is the wheel base of the vehicle? How width, length, weight, fuel capacity, fuel efficiency, and log transformed value of the sales. And then what is the model? What is the kind of model we are talking, and the log value of the sales we have. Now, with this data, we are going to ask an interesting question: whether people care about the fuel efficiency of the car or the vehicle when they purchase. That is the question we are asking. Whether the people will care when they buy the car, whether they are more concerned with the fuel efficiency or not. So if you use a correlation, so we can use this command called analyze, correlate, bivariate. Our variable is sales and another variable is the miles per gallon, right? And we wanted to do, I can show you also quickly this one. So we can go to analyze, correlate. Okay. Where is that? Sorry. Analyze, correlate, bivariate. Okay. With the confidence, but here also we'll get confidence interval. So we wanted to measure sales and where is the fuel efficiency? Fuel efficiency. Where is it? Where is the option to write that one? Sorry. Wanted to analyze, correlate, bivariate. Okay, I wanted to correlate between sales and fuel efficiency, miles per gallon. It is taking only one variable. Can take two, sales. Yeah, I taken both the variables. Sales, I wanted to know, is there any correlation between the sales and fuel efficiency? So we can run. We got an output. You got an output. Very strange reason you got here. Look at here. The sales and the relationship between the sales and the fuel efficiency is negative. You mean to say that nobody cares when you buy a car or when you buy a motor vehicle? Nobody cares what is the correlation, whether how much is the fuel efficiency. But just now we discussed that whenever you buy, even when you buy a Benz car, we ask a question: if I put 1 liter of petrol, how many kilometers I will get a mileage? But this statistical tool say that there is no there is a negative correlation. There is, first of all, there is no correlation. Then it comes to negative correlation of 0.017. Is it not strange? Is it not strange? Are you able to see my screen? Are you able to see my screen?
Visible, sir.
Yeah. Is it not strange that nobody asked a question? Is any correlation between the sales and the fuel efficiency? Looks very strange. Okay, let us go and look at that. Right? It looks like really very strange. Let us go and look at that. So, are you able to see the screen now? I'm coming back to the slide.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. So this is what I shown you. I shown you a few minutes ago. We got a negative correlation. My God, how come? Everybody will ask about the fuel efficiency, but this is saying a negative correlation, right? So what might have happened? So the correlation report in the table is negative, very strange, which suggests that designers should not focus on the fuel efficiency because nobody care about the fuel efficiency. Is it true? Because I got a negative correlation, so engineers should not care about the fuel efficiency. So they should ignore it completely because there's a negative correlation, they should ignore it. But the Pearson correlation works better when the variables are approximately normally distributed and have, next point I told you, no outliers. What is outliers? We can do a scatter plot, then this issue will be revealed. So when you do a scatter plot, you can get a sales data which had a skewed distribution. This is the data which I applied, and the data have a skewed distribution. You can see here, you can see some outliers here. You can see one car is priced more than 500,000. Some cars are giving a fuel efficiency of more than 30 plus here, right? It is given. So therefore, by fixing this problem, because we want to fix this problem, without fixing the problem, when you run the correlation, we end up in this problem. We end up such kind of problem. So how do you fix this problem? First, let us remove the outlier. So we go and remove the outliers, right? Second, what we can do, we can log transform the sales. Very, very important point. Why are you log transforming the sale? Any idea? Why are you log transforming the sale? Any idea? Why are you transforming that variable? Log sales. Why are you transforming into log instead of taking the actual sales? Those who are doing a research in finance, they should know. Why are you taking, instead of taking the absolute sales value, why are you transforming them into log? Any idea?
Because it will reduce the outliers.
Exactly. Because some companies have a very high sales, some companies have a very low sales. For instance, log sales you take, it vary depending upon the model which we are selling. It vary depending upon the model what we are selling, right? So generally when you use age, I mean age means the age of the company. When you use the age of the company, when you use the sales data, it's always a good idea to transform that into log, or you make them into square, or you take the root. Why are you doing all those things, so that you can kind of normalize the data? So now what we have done, we are going to use the same thing. Instead of using the sales data, we are going to use the log sales data. So if you look at that, I will run the same thing. So we are back here. We do the same thing. Go to analyze, correlate, bivariate. So we will remove this fuel. Let us keep the fuel efficiency. So here, instead of taking the sales, we are going to talk about the log transformed sales. I'm going to talk about the log. So we wanted to study about the fuel efficiency, which means miles per gallon, and log transformed sales. Let us look at that. Yeah, you see the output? Something very strange you could see here. Are you able to see here? Some strange output has come. Sorry. Some strange output has come. Are you able to notice here? So are you able to notice here? So the what we are getting here, I try to give some color. Okay, I made a different color here. Are you able to see the correlation between the fuel efficiency and the log transformed sale? You are getting a positive correlation just now. So 1 minute ago you were getting a negative correlation. Now we are getting a positive correlation. Now we are getting a positive correlation of 0.120. Few minutes ago you got a negative correlation of minus 0.17. How come? Because of the very simple reason, we took the data of the sales with the actual observation. We should always take variables like sales, variables like age of the company, we should get transformed into log and then look at that. So we already did the log transformation and we run the test and we got the outcome. So we remove this, we look at this thing, but now the correlation we got, the correlation is positive, we got the answer, but not significant. Is it so? Let us go and look at that. Correlation is positive, but it is not significant. Okay, fuel efficiency 0.13 and look at the significant two-tailed 0.138. As you most of you know that the significant value should be 0.05 or less. Then we can say that it's a significant. But we got a positive correlation, but it is not significant. Are you able to see where I am talking? Significant level two-tailed, we are getting 0.138. This answer should be less than 0.05. Then only we can say that we have the significant relationship is there. So how do we deal that one? What is wrong with that here? See, let us go and look at here. Let us go and look at here. So customer demographic for trucks and cars are different. Oh my God. So now when you look at the sales, we look at the log sales, we look at the miles per gallon, but we are not looked into the customer type, because we have customers who are buying trucks. We also have customers who are buying car. Because the people who buy truck are for a different reason. The people who buy cars are for a different reason. The people who buy truck, they wanted a more load capacity. They wanted more pulling capacity. Right? That is what they look at that. The people who buy car, they buy the car for different reasons. So in this pool of our sales, we have both trucks and cars. So now what we need to do, we go to look at only for car separately and you have to look for truck separately. Right? So you can remove only car, you can look at only cars, you can look at that, and you can drive it for separate it for truck and separate it for car. Okay, by splitting the data according to the vehicle type, you can look at the more accurate view of the association. You can go to the data, split file, compare the groups, and then you can run a correlation. Again, use the same thing. Then you will get a significant and a fairly strong positive correlation between sales efficiency, sales and fuel efficiency of the car. Are you getting the point? Earlier we did the correlation, we found a negative correlation. Then we log transformed the data, then we got positive correlation. Still we are not getting any significant correlation. Then we look at the data and we find that, okay, this sales consisting of truck is also there, car is also there. Then we divide that into two groups. Truck people are in one group and car people are in one group. Then you run the test, and then you can find out a significant and fairly strong positive correlation between sales and fuel efficiency of the car. Are you getting? This is how we need to go. So the most important point here is when you are getting data like sales, when you are having data like age of the corporation, such kind of data are variable across the different firms. So therefore, it's a good idea to bring that number into a common platform. What is that common platform? You convert that actual sales into log sales. You convert that actual age into log age. Or you can take the square root. You can take the square root. Or you can take the inverse. So what actually we are doing a simple statistical technique we are doing. We are kind of transforming the variable. Why are you transforming the variable? By transforming the variable, all the variables are in the same page or in the same measurement. So it is easier for us to compare, easier for us to do any kind of analysis. Is it clear for you? Okay. If you look at for trucks, the correlation is positive but not significant. So to reach this conclusion, we need to work around the data per data, and then only we can calculate. If we simply run the correlation coefficient, we may not get any very perfect answer. We may get that. Is it clear for you?
Yes, sir, it's clear.
Okay. Is it clear? Okay, fine. So this is what I wanted to share it with you on the correlation. So you can use either this SPSS, or you can use RStudio, or whatever the data point that you wanted to use, you can use it. There is no hard and fast rule that you should use this particular software or not. So I will share you this file also. I will share it with you. You can share the file. You can run the correlation in the Excel sheet also. You can do. But Excel has certain limitation with reference to the maximum number of observations you can record. So that is the reason why we go for some specialized statistical packages like SPSS or anything. So you can use any package. R is coming to you free of cost. This SPSS also you can download. You can use it as a trial version. You can use that one, or you can procure this also, or you can use the RStudio also. Okay. So this is with reference to correlation. Now I will take you quickly to another interesting area. Yeah. Namely regression. So when we talk about, are you able to see the screen?
Yes, sir.
SPSS we are seeing, sir.
Oh, no. I already exited. Are you able to see the slide? PPT? Are you able to see the slide? Regression titled.
No, sir. No.
Yeah, now we
Now
can.
it is visible, sir.
Okay.
Now it is visible, sir.
Now I put it into the presentation mode. Is it visible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It is visible.
Okay.
Yes,
Fine.
sir. Visible, sir.
So no, so okay, fine. Okay, thank you. So now when you talk about regression, there are multiple. Yeah. Yes. So there are three different types of regression we can look at that. One is the simple, or another one is the multiple. The third one is the logistic. So we try to cover as much as possible in the whatever the time available to us. So in correlation, what we did is we tried to find out what is the relationship between two variables. What is the relationship between the sales and the fuel efficiency of the car? That is what we look at that. Or we can find out what is the relationship between the two variables. That's what we look at that. We go one step further. Here we go one step further and look at predicting one variable from the other variable, which means we try to predict from one known variable that we will try to predict another unknown variable. So that is what we are going to talk about in the regression. For instance, you wanted to predict the level of stress or anxiety and the amount until you have to make your presentation. And of course, suppose tomorrow you have a very important meeting, or tomorrow you have an important seminar, and you have to present your points in the meeting. So I wanted to measure your level of stress and the time of presentation. Suppose my presentation is next week, Monday, sir, I will relax. It's not, the coming Monday. It's next week after. So it's sometime, not on 13th, it is on 20th. So I relax. I have no stress, nothing. So time is coming. So my presentation is on 20th of September. So 13th comes, 14th comes, 15th comes. So I'm very closer to my presentation date, then my stress level will go up. I'm very excited. My anxiety level will go up. Because so once when your presentation is over, then I am becoming to normal, right? So you wanted to measure these kind of things. So what is the expected correlation? There could be a negative correlation perfectly. How? Because the smaller amount of time until the presentation, there's a larger anxiety. So I got to present in next 20 minutes. Anxiety level will be very high. Okay, small amount of the time. So I have only 15 minutes to present. My anxiety level will be more. So I got to present 20 days down the line, sir. Very cool, relax, no anxiety, no excited, right? So that is what the negative correlation we observed. So we could extend this logic by asking an interesting question. If there is 10 minutes to go until someone has to make a presentation, how anxious will he or she will be? So that is what we are trying to predict. So when are you getting what I'm saying? So we try to measure the level of stress or anxiety and the time left for you to make presentation. My presentation is scheduled on 20th September evening 4 o'clock. I'm very cool, very relaxed now. Why? Because I have 2 weeks almost. Okay, now time is passing 13, 14, 15 like that. So today is 20th morning. So my presentation is due at 4 o'clock. So now my is around 12:30. So my level will be more. So only 10 minutes to go to my presentation. So my answer level will be more. So that is what we are trying to measure here. So if there is a 10 minutes to go until somebody has to make a presentation, how anxious will that person be? So the essence of regression analysis is it's a way of predicting some kind of outcome from one or more independent variable. We are trying to measure. We are trying to predict something from one or more of the independent variable. We use the word very often, in many of your research paper, you could see this word called the research model of my proposed studies go like this. So what is this model? Look at here. So a very simple model is nothing but you have a data. From the data, you create a model. That model is always coming with an error. I repeat, any model that you create, that always comes with an error. So how do you come up with a model? I have a data. From the data, I create the model. The model will always come with error. Why, sir? Let us look at it. Say, for instance, we ask a question. So how many books A read? We run a regression and we found out the answer. A is most likely to read 3 books. And B is most likely to read 1 book. C will not read any book. D will read 2 books. E will read 4 books. This is what we estimate. We projected through our statistical model. But actually, we said A will read 3 books, but actually he read only 2 books. We said B will read 1 book, but actually B read only 0 book. We said C will not read any book, but he read 1 book. The model said D will read 2 books, but actually D read 1 book. We said E will read 4 books. Exactly, he also read 4 books. Now, in statistics, the difference between the estimated and actual value is what is called as often it is called as a error, or in a statistical term, they are called as a residuals. Residuals are nothing but the difference between what is estimated and what is actual. That is called as a error, or that is called as a residual. Is it clear? So that's why I said that the model is not free from error. The model is always have certain error. So in this case, whatever the difference between 3 and 2, difference between 1 and 0, 0 and 1, 2 and 1, there is no difference here. So that is what is called as a residual or error. So we are interested about our population. So if you look at the large number of sample from the same population, each sample would be different. So it's average. So if you plot these means on a histogram, we will get something called sampling distribution of the mean, which will normally have a specific shape known as a normal distribution. Look at here. This is what we are talking. So here we have a population, and you cannot study all the population. You take the sample 1. The average of the sample 1 is 3. Then you take 1 sample from this side. Average is equal to 2. You take 1 sample, average 3. So like this, you can take that, and then you calculate the mean of mean, grand mean. So this is the population from which you can compute the mean, 2 mean, 3, 4, 5, 6 like that. Then you compute the mean of this mean, which is called grand mean. So that is equal to 3. Then you calculate the standard deviation, that is equal to 1.22. So you plot all these means, in a graphical manner, then what you are getting is called as this histogram like this. So that is why we always say the normal distribution will be like this, and it looks like a bell-shaped curve. So that is why we say that. Why this is happening, sir? This is happening because of this fundamental, the sampling distribution of the mean. So we are getting a mean of mean, or what we call grand mean. That is 3. The grand mean is 3. How do you call this number, sir? I take the average of all these numbers. I take all the average of all these samples. Okay. So now let us come with this background. Let us look at the simple regression. So we try to predict the dependent variable with the help of only one independent variable. You wanted to predict something with the help of only one independent variable. For instance, you try to predict the marks scored by the student on the basis of the number of books the person read. So we assume that when the person read more books, we assume based upon the past knowledge, we assume that based upon the literature, we assume that when a person read more books, then he is more likely to score more marks. Sir, how do you say this, sir? That is based upon my past wisdom. When a person read more book, then there's a higher chances that he understand more, he writes well, so he score good marks. That is what the general wisdom, that is what the past knowledge, that is what the existing knowledge. So now we are going to do the same thing. So when you say a simple linear regression equation, we write an equation like this. Y is equal to A plus BI xi plus E. Don't forget this. This is what is called as a error term or residual. Just now I told you what is called as an error term or residual. So what is this BI? The beta value of this XI. What is XI? This X is nothing but how many books a person read. Look at here. We are interested in this Y and interested in this X. Okay. Y is the mark scored by the student and X is the number of books read by this student. Say we call one student and ask him how many books you read for this exam. He say 12. So just we make a note of it. And compare it, what is the mark he is scoring. So based upon that, we are going to predict that if a person read 1 book, 2 book, 3 book, how many marks he is going to score. That is what is our objective of analysis. So Y is a dependent variable, that is the marks, what that particular student is going to score. And A is the constant. I will explain you in a minute what is called A is a constant. Then B is the beta coefficient, which explains you what is the impact of this on this. The magnitude of the impact is explained by this B or the beta coefficient. Xi, as I said, that the number of books read by the student, and E is the error term. Is it clear, or whether it looks very complicated? Whether it looks complicated or looks easy. So what I marked in red ink is what we are interested. We are interested to predict the marks of a student by looking at how many books he read. So generally we feel, or generally we come to the conclusion based upon the past wisdom, when a student read more and more books, there is a possibility that he may score higher and higher marks. How do you say? Out of my past wisdom. Now we draw a model. Y is equal to A plus B1 or BIXI plus error. So Xi is the number of books he is reading. Y is the marks he is scoring. Then what is this BI, sir? What is beta coefficient? Now look at here very carefully. Now we are trying to find out what is the impact of this number of books he is reading on the marks. So that is measured by this beta coefficient. What is the impact? Suppose if he read 1 book, then his mark will go by 0.5. How do you get this 0.5, sir? That is what is called as the beta coefficient. That is what is called as the beta coefficient. Are you with me? Are you getting?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now I will explain you what this A. See, now look at here, very simple example. Whether the boy read a book or not, whether he read a book or not, he will score some minimum marks. How come, sir? How come he can score marks? He not read even a single book. He has not even read even a single book of what you taught or what you prescribed. But the boy is observing in your lecture. He is observing in your lecture. He is making some notes. And even without reading any textbook that you are recommending to him, still he can score some marks. Do you agree with me? Do you agree with me?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yes, sir. He is not read any book, but he is very attentive in your lecture. He is making some notes. So for the examination, he read only his notes and he recall whatever you taught to him, and he can score some marks. So we cannot outrightly reject. If you don't read any book, you cannot score any mark. So in a simple statistical term, if all your variables towards your right hand side, these variables, if all your variables towards your right hand side are 0, still you have some impact on the mark. Still, if the student does not read any book prescribed by you, still he could score some marks. So that is what is called as constant. Are you with me? Are you getting?
Sir, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Sir, one small doubt.
Yes.
From where we get the beta coefficient and constant?
Yeah, constant. Okay. See, let's come back to this example. Okay. In this example, your objective of analysis, I repeat, your objective of analysis is if a student read more books, then he may score more marks. How do you say this statement, sir? Out of my past wisdom, I know many students who scored many books, who scored high marks. Okay. So based upon the past wisdom, based upon the literature, we come to this conclusion. Okay. Now the important point is, now even if a student could score some mark without reading a single book, so that is what is called constant. That is what is called constant. Without reading a single book, he can still score, say, 4 or 5 marks. Whereas if you read more books, then he can score 90 marks. Okay. Now, how do you get this? So what is this beta coefficient? It measures, suppose if one student read 1 book, if a student read 1 book, so this beta coefficient says the beta coefficient answer is coming to 1.7. It means if a person read 1 book, he will score 1.7 marks extra. If he claim that, sir, I read 5 books, so 5 into 1.7. So that is the marks he is most likely to score. Now the another question, where do I get this beta coefficient? We run it through the regression. We run this data through the regression, and the regression output will generate what is the constant, what is the beta coefficient. Like that, it will throw you all the data. Like that, it will throw you all the data. Are you getting?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. I'll show it to you. So what is this beta coefficient? This is an indicator of the relative importance of a particular independent variable on the dependent variable, right? A variable with a high beta coefficient indicate that that particular variable is the most important one in explaining. Say, for instance, in this example, I put only one. I have BIXI. So XI is the number of books he is reading. Maybe in the next equation, we are going to add BIX2. BIX3, or you can say B1X1, B2X2, B3X3. Like that, you have more variables towards your right hand side. But in this case, because we are talking about a simple linear regression, we are putting only one variable. But in real life, we may add another variable. So when you add another variable, we are going to add one more term towards here called B2X2. Then we are going to add one more term here called B3X3. Like that, we can add more number of variables. So when you have more number of variable, whatever the variable next to that, it may be X2 or X3, where you are getting more beta coefficient. So that is the most important variable because that contributes significantly. Okay, that is what we are talking about, what I have written over here. Okay, the significance of this beta coefficient can be tested through a t-test, but no need to worry about that. Now everything is done through in the software. Now, this is the most important point. Often people talk about the term called R squared. So when you run any regression, when you run a regression with a simple or multiple, doesn't matter. When you run a regression, at the end of the regression, you will get an R squared output. See, generally speaking, the R squared, it tells you how good is your model in explaining the impact of number of books a boy is reading and his marks. So, for instance, I run this test with the actual data. I got my R squared 0.62. So, I convert that into percentage. That is coming to 62%. Now, this R squared of 62%, is it good or bad? Is it good or not good? How do you make a call? So, R squared basically explain you how good is your model in explaining the unknown phenomena. My unknown phenomena is the marks. My known phenomena is the books. So through this, I try to predict the mark the boy is going to score. I find out that the R squared of this particular model is coming to 0.62, meaning which this model is explaining you 62%. So is it good or bad? Technically speaking, if you are getting an R squared close to 1, if you are getting an R squared close to 1, so 0.95 or 0.98 or 0.89, which means I'm close to 1. Then we can say that this particular model explains majority of the variation. This particular model, so which means my R squared is equal to 0.92, means this model explains 92% correct. So how much is this model is not explaining? How much is not explaining? It explains you 92% correct. How much is not explained by this model?
8%.
8%. Very simple. Simple mathematics. Simple 8%. So this is fantastic. Now, many researchers, I repeat, many researchers have the feeling, sir, my R squared is only 0.62, sir. What should I do? Can I change the variable? Can I add some more variable? Can I transform the variable? Like that, they ask this question. Please be noted, 0.62 is not bad, or 0.95 is not good. What is the correct R squared? Is there any thumb rule? There is no thumb rule for your R squared. So you got to look at your own literature, because some time ago one madam said that she is doing research on emotional intelligence, measuring the emotions. So in that particular case, what is the general R squared in that particular field, psychology field? Within psychology, she is studying on emotion. In emotions literature, what is the average R squared as reported by other researchers? Not 20 years ago, in the last 5 years, in the last 3 years. What is the average R squared reported by them? So the average R squared reported by them also around 0.57 or 0.58, 0.59 or 0.62. Whereas you are getting 0.62, it's a fantastic result, because they are reporting around 57, 58. You got 0.62, fantastic result. So that's a very important point you should not forget. So R squared explains you how good is your model fit. That is what R squared is explaining you. Now, in that case, theoretically, technically, statistically speaking, your R squared should be close to 1. Then your model is very good in explaining. But that may not always be possible. In certain domains, like what Madam said about in psychology, in measuring emotion, you may not get close to 1. You may always get somewhere around 0.5, 0.58, 0.6, like that only you will get. So is it not good? Sir, you still in the statistics books, they said you should get close to 1. Then only your model is correct. Yes, fantastic. Your answer is correct. Your observation is correct. But in my own domain or in my own field, the average R squared reported by many of the leading researchers are only 0.57. So I am getting 0.62. It's fantastic. Very good. Are you getting my point? Is it clear for everyone?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So don't worry too much about R squared. Whatever you are getting, you should take it. You should not worry, sir, what do I do? My R squared is very poor, sir. Okay, can you recommend something, sir? Don't worry. Look at your literature. What is the average number they are reporting? If your number is also in alignment with the same thing, no problem. Go ahead with that. Okay. Fine. So that is what I explained about the term called R squared. If the R squared is insignificant, because we also test R squared, is it significant or not? If the R squared is insignificant, the entire model goes wrong. So you develop a model and you run everything. You got an R squared, fantastic R squared, 0.99. You look at whether it's significant or not, it says it's not significant. Then the entire model is useless. When your R squared is not significant, then your entire model is useless, right? So you should be doubly, triply careful. You not only are getting a high R squared or low R squared, your R squared should also be significant. How do you test the significance of R squared? So automatically in the software, you will get something called as a t-test. They will test that and do that. So I mark this one with redding. The R squared is insignificant. The entire regression model will be useless. Okay. We can see that I have a data here called books grade. I try to show it to you. Yeah, so if you observe here, there is a data which talks about how many books a student read, what is the mark he got. So that is what is the data which I have. So an imaginary data with only 4 observations. So you may not get the perfect answer. So anyway, you can run this test. When you run this test, let me look at what is the command. Graph scatter, y is grade. Okay, I forgot long ago. Okay, we can directly go to analyze regression. We can look at that. So we can look at that linear. So what is our analyze regression? Linear, our dependent variable is grades. Dependent variable is our mark or grades. Independent variable is the books. Okay. Yeah, that's all. So let us click. So if you observe here, it talks about what is the variable we entered. So books. Yeah. So look at here, you got an R squared, fantastic R squared. You got an R squared of 0.830. Okay, very good number, which means this model explains you 0.83% it explains you. Okay, fine. Then let us look at that. What is the, someone asked me, sir, how do I look at the constant and the beta coefficient? You can see here, standardized, you can look at there are two things. Normally we can look at the unstandardized coefficient. The beta value, the constant value is equal to 47. The beta value is coming to 3.9, and you look at this extreme right side value. So this number comes to 0.08. Okay, it should be actually speaking, it should be less than 0.05. It's okay. Maybe for the we have only 4 observations. So therefore we are having an influence of. So if I read one book, I'm getting 3.9 marks extra. Whether I read a book or not, I will get 47 marks. Whether I read a book or not, this is how we have to make an interpretation. Please be noted. So when the constant is 47, whether I read a book or not, I will score 47 mark. And for each book I'm reading, I repeat, for each book I'm reading, I will get 3.9 marks. So I read 10 books, so I will get 10 into 3.9 marks. I read 5 books, I will get 5 into 3.9 marks. Okay. But unfortunately, I told you should also check whether this regression is, whether the regression is significant or not. So here also we are getting only so. We are not getting, it should be technically speaking 0.05 and below, but we are getting 0.08. So only 10% it's coming. Why the simple reason is it's not full-fledged data. As I said earlier, it's not a full-fledged data. This was showing you only 4 observations. So that's why we are not getting the full-fledged number, right? Okay. So we'll go back and complicate the life a little bit. We are again back to the slide. Yeah, so the inference, you can put a scatter plot. This is what I had shown you a few minutes ago. So this is what you could see. Whatever I had shown you, I am depicting in the slide also. Hope you're able to see. I told you a few minutes ago, the constant is 47, which means whether I read a book or not, I can simply walk into the exam room and write the exam. I can get 47 marks. If I read one book, I will get 3.9 marks. Okay. But how significant is these numbers? For instance, it is not very significant. I mean, you already know that significant test, we always check that it will be less than 0.05. We are getting around 0.08. Here also we are getting around 0.08. So it's a kind of a okay, not great. Okay. So now in the same analogy, if you observe here, you have one thing here, if you could notice, there is a term called R squared, and there is the next one term called over there called adjusted R squared. What is this? R squared, just now we talked about that. The R squared is, in this case, we got an R squared is equal to 0.689, which means this particular model explains 68% correct. That is what is the meaning. So which means 32% is not yet explained. Okay. Then you have one more column towards your right hand side called adjusted R squared. So what is this term adjusted R squared? Do we need to worry about that? Do we need to worry or do we need to care about the adjusted R squared? No, sir. Only R squared is enough, sir, for us. We don't need to care or we don't need to worry about adjusted R squared. Any views? Any views? Whether do we need to worry about adjusted R squared or maybe let us not worry much, sir. We can focus only on the R squared. Or is there any merit of looking at adjusted R squared? Any thoughts? Yes? Any thoughts? So if you're not able to talk, you can type in the chat box also so that I can see.
Sir, I think it takes care of the other variables as well. So it's a fine-tuned result.
Okay, it is a fine-tuned result. Okay, very good. Okay, very good. So it's a fine-tuned result. So as a researcher, do we need to care about or not? Or we need to, because if you look at most of the reports, they report only R squared. They never ever talk about the adjusted R squared. Most of the papers. So which means that is not look like, because most of the researchers are reporting only R squared and nobody report adjusted R squared. So let us not care about adjusted R squared, or we need to look at that. Any thoughts? Any thoughts on that? So I got an answer saying that it's a more refined R squared. That is why it's called adjusted R squared. That's perfectly fine answer. But do we need to worry or not to worry? That's my question. Do we need to care or not care? Because most of the research reports are reporting only the R squared only. Nobody reports adjusted R squared. So let us also ignore about it and go ahead with our own point. Go ahead with only R squared. Any quick thoughts on that? Okay, fine, no problem. I can share with you. I can tell you. I can show you my thoughts on that. So if you look at here, I will tell you the real life in scenario. See, what is adjusted R squared? If you look at the adjusted R square is always, adjusted R square is reduced when the number of independent variables is increased. Most important point. See, if you look at here, if you add more number of independent variables, your adjusted R square will decrease. The difference will be more, 0.68, 0.58. When the number of independent variables are going more and more, then the difference will get wider and wider. So what, sir? Is there any problem because of that? No problem because of that. This is how we calculate adjusted R squared. Adjusted R squared is nothing but R squared minus K into 1 minus R squared. What is this K? K is nothing but the number of independent variables. K is nothing but the number of independent variables, right? And so if R squared and adjusted R squares are close to each other, most important point. If R squared and adjusted R square are close to each other, then the model is considered as good in explaining the variation. That's all. No, don't worry about anything else. So do I need to care about adjusted R squared? No need to worry about that. Just compare what is your R squared, look at what is your adjusted R squared. If both numbers are close to each other, then our model is fairly good in explaining the variation. Let us go back and look at this, this phenomena. Look at here. So 0.68, 0.58. So not big difference. Suppose this is 0.68, this number is 0.14. It's a vast difference. Then the model is not very good in explaining this one. Are you getting my point? So only time when do we need to care about the R squared and adjusted R squared, the difference between R squared and adjusted R squared should not be very wide. Should not be very wide. So how much wide is permissible or not? It's all up to you. It's all up to you. So 0.10 is it okay or 0.50 is okay? It's all up to you. You can take a call. You can take a call, look at your own domain and take a call. So therefore, the most important point where we need to carry is what I wrote in the red ink. If R square and adjusted R square are close to each other, then the model is considered as good in explaining the variation. Okay. There is another important term which every one of you should know. With that, we'll stop because we have to wind up by 1 o'clock. The term called multicollinearity. This is a very commonly used term you could see in your paper. So what is this multicollinearity? It is nothing but very simple concept only. It indicates the intercorrelation of independent variable. What is that? If you could remember and recollect the first model which I had shown you, here we are trying to predict what is the number of marks a boy will score according to the number of books he read. So we put only one variable. We put only one variable. How many books you read, what is the mark he will score. Now I wanted to add some more variables. Now I will ask him, even after the college hours, when you go home, do you listen to some YouTube video? I asked, not any movie thing related to our subject. Do you watch any educational YouTube video? I asked next question. Then I ask him, do you listen to any podcast? Because now the world is moving. Now the world is moving towards different line, right? So you teach a concept in the class. Then the boy goes to the home and he opened the YouTube video and listen to some other professors or listen to the same concept he is looking at in the YouTube. Then he listened to some podcast. And then he comes for the examination. So now we have to put two more variables. So we ask how many books you read. You also ask him how many educational YouTube video that you watch. You ask him how many educational podcast channels you listen to that. So you ask three questions. You have three variables, X1, X2, X3. X1 is books, X2 is the educational YouTube video, and X3 is the number of podcasts you listen to that. So you ask all these things, right? You have more than one. So now if there is a correlation between the YouTube the boy is watching and the podcast he is listening, then that is called multicollinearity. Because the basic assumption of regression equation is all these variables towards your right hand side. Number of books you are reading, how many YouTube videos you are watching, how many podcast sessions you are listening, all those things should be independent. That's the basic assumption. But if they are not independent, if they are correlated or intercorrelated, a boy who read more books at home, who also watch more video, educational video, who watch more educational video is also listening to more educational podcast. Are you getting my point? If there is a multicollinearity here, then there is a little bit problem. It's not a big problem. There is a little bit problem we need to take. We need to handle it. That's all. So it indicates there is an intercorrelation among the independent variables. So what is the problem, sir? If there is a multicollinearity problem, then the beta coefficient, whatever we are calculating, that is unreliable. What is beta coefficient? Just now I showed you. The beta coefficient you can see here. So the beta coefficient here, we say that if you read one book, you are going to score 3.9 marks. But if the variables are intercorrelated, you cannot rely on this beta coefficient. This is not reliable. So not unstable, we say that, not reliable or unstable. So therefore, that is the only problem if there is a multicollinearity. Okay, it's not a big deal. How do you check whether my data have this multicollinearity problem or not? It's the most important point. With that, we'll stop. So how do I check whether my data have a multicollinearity problem or not? We can look at two statistical output generated by the any software, whether SPSS or whatever it may be. Two things, please make a note of that one. One is called tolerance. Another one is called variance inflation factor. Please report these two figures in your research report. When you do a multiple regression for your research work or for your PhD thesis, kindly report what is the tolerance level, what is the variance inflation factor in your report while writing a report. Your reviewer will appreciate you like anything, or your examiner will appreciate you like anything. Yeah, this scholar knows his stuff. He knows how to handle multicollinearity. He knows how to handle multicollinearity. He knows how to measure this tolerance and variance. So tolerance and variance inflation factor can be captured. So I will show you how to capture what is the number. Suppose you find out there is a multicollinearity exists. It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. So we can handle it. How can we handle it? Probably we can increase the sample size. Earlier you were having 300 sample size. Probably you can increase it by another 100 or 150. Or you can transform the variable. Just now we talked about that. Standardization. You can convert all the variables into Z-score transform. Okay, you can form you can transform into a Z-score, or you can transform into a log, or you can transform them into a square root, or you can transform them into a square. You can do whatever the way in which you can do, right? Or you can form a composite variable. Okay, the boy who read the book, the boy who watches a YouTube video, he also listens to a podcast. So put both together. Put both together and create a composite variable. Or if it is whatever I trade I cannot do, sir, then probably you can drop the most intercorrelated variable. Or perform a ridge regression. That's slightly on the higher side. You can ignore that. Or we can do the stepwise regression. That's doable. Now we'll come back to this point. I said that. See, you can measure the presence of multicollinearity through the statistical tool called tolerance and VAF. So what is tolerance? How much it should be there? So it is computed for each independent variable, and it is 1 minus r squared. What I wrote in red ink is most important. The tolerance value closer to 0, especially less than 0.20, indicate there is a high multicollinearity. Please note this point, sir. I will share the slides also, no problem. Okay. If there is how do you check whether there's a so you run the statistical test in your software and you ask, okay, I wanted to know what is my VAF and tolerance level. If your tolerance is less than 0.20, then there is a presence of multicollinearity. Okay, most important point. So lower tolerance increases the standard error, so it have all these problems. How about VAF, sir? What is the number that it should have? So another multicollinearity measure. This is how we calculated. So a high VAF, how much number should be there? This is very important. A variance inflation factor of 4 and above indicate there is a multicollinearity problem. There is a multicollinearity problem. So a tolerance should be above 0. So therefore no multicollinearity. The VAF figure should be low, which means less than 4. Then there is no multicollinearity. This is how we ought to say. So you actually run a regression for your research work and you got an answer. So while writing a report, the researcher tested the multicollinearity through tolerance and VAF factor, and the tolerance value I got say 0.09, and I got the variance inflation factor, I got 1.3. Please write that word, write that one sentence. The reviewer will appreciate you really like anything. Okay, I will stop here because I already touched 1 o'clock. And if you have any doubts, I will take it up for next 1 or 2 minutes. I will share you all my slides to Professor Gurumurthy, so you can attend the same from him, and you may refer that for further purposes. Okay. So if you have any queries, I will take it up for 1 or 2 minutes. Otherwise, we can wind up.
Dear participants, it is the time for interaction. Professor is waiting, please. If you need any clarification, please clarify now.
I will share you the slides to the organizers. You can get it from them. I will share you my slides. You can refer it. So I also given some of the books I mentioned. You should read. That's a very interesting book. You all should read that book. The title of the book is Statistics for Those Who Hate Statistics. Statistics written by John Neil Salkind. Very interesting book. The title of the book is Statistics for Those Who Hate Statistics. Okay, you please read that book. Very interesting book. Salkand, Neil J. Salkand, very good book. I mentioned in the slide also. Okay, Priyanka, I lost power due to network failure. Okay, it's okay. Okay, fine. So if there are no other questions, I'll stop now and again over to the organizers.
Sir, excuse me.
Yeah, over to you. Yeah, my session is over. Over to you. Yeah.
Sir, in simple regression, one independent variable and one dependent variable. Whereas
Exactly,
in the case of multiple regression, more than one independent variable.
Yeah, multiple independent variables. There should be one dependent variable and there are multiple independent variables. So I told you in the second example, I told you, you wanted to measure the mark of a student not only by asking how many books you read. You also ask another question. Do you watch YouTube video, educational YouTube video? So that is another variable number 2. You ask, do you listen to podcast? That is another variable. So 3 variables you can put. When you add more than one variable, that's called multiple regression.
Sir, my question is, if it is more than 2 independent variables and more than 2 dependent variables, then what we have to do?
Then we can't run regression. Then we have to use some other statistical tool.
That means in every regression, it is only one dependent variable.
Yes, exactly.
Whether it may be a simple, multiple, or logistic, whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, one. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Because we are trying to predict one unknown variable from multiple known variable. That is what is the crux of regression. We try to predict one unknown variable from many other known variables. So it should be only one. I cannot put 2 over there. If it is 2, I cannot use multiple regression. Then I have some other statistical tool. And I have to use some other statistical tool. Are you getting
what are those, sir? What are those?
Yeah, again, what type of dependent variable? Is it, what is the scale of that? We have to look at that.
It is interval scale.
Interval scale. So what are you trying to measure? What are you trying to measure or what are you trying to predict?
Okay.
What are you trying to predict? We have to look at that.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Okay, any other questions?
Sir, one quick question. Can the correlation matrix help in finding the multicollinearity? If we do correlation matrix with...
see, I told you 2 better tools, no? Why you wanted to depend upon the correlation? Correlation will try to help you out. If it is more than 0.33, then there is a correlation between the 2 variables. I told you higher tools. Just now I told you 2 important tools which any software will generate for you. One is variance inflation factor, another one is a tolerance. Any standard statistical package will generate you. So instead of writing a correlation, you write in your report, I checked the VIF, I checked the tolerance level. So my model is not coming into any multicollinearity because I checked. You report the number. Your reviewer will feel very happy. Your examiner will feel very happy. Oh, this Mohammed knows his subject. He did a wonderful thing like that.
Sure, sir. Thank you.
Right? Yeah.
If there is no question, dear participants, okay,
Yes,
I will propose vote of thanks.
Thank you, participants. Thank you, participants. Time up now, please. May I request Dr. B. Menaga madam to deliver a vote of thanks. Please, madam.
Thank you, sir. On behalf of the organizing team, I thank Professor P. Saravanan sir for the highly informative and interactive session. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank
And
you,
I,
madam.
and I also thank the participants for
Thank you,
their
sir.
active participation. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you
Thank you,
very much,
everyone.
sir. Very nice, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. I will share the slides with the organizer. You can get it from them, right? Okay, all the very best. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for
Thank you, sir.
good
Thank you.
lecture, sir.
Okay, thank you very much and bye to everyone. All the best. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, madam. Thank you, participants. Thank you, participants.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, madam. Yeah, participants will meet sharply at 2 p.m. Thank you all.